Sign something? Myself? Okay. Feedback? Okay. Like a good know where to sign. And then obviously do them one more time. Just let me know.
Testing. That's what goes. Yeah, go with it. There's some new faces.
Okay, good morning, colleagues. I'm speaking into the mic, although it doesn't sound like that, but it's for our virtual attendees that's actually attending from their offices and listening in. So it's called live streaming. So that's what we're doing. We also at CTL are exploring a bit with live streaming. So if for some reason you've got a request for that, please contact us so that we can try and pilot or set it up and see if, especially for alignment purposes as well. Okay, so we are very privileged, and sorry for those who have met Prof. Panos.
Abbreviated introduction. They can listen one of the.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. So this is a short introduction. This is Prof. Panos. So Prof. Panos is from Macquarie University, and we thought it well to invite him because he is a teaching learning expert. Really done a lot of research in it, working in Centre for Teaching and Learnings all over in the UK, New Zealand and Australia, and currently working at the Macquarie University as an Associate Dean of Quality and Standards. So his responsibility is quality of teaching and learning, enhancing quality in teaching and learning. So we are very privileged to have him here. The session of today is team-based learning, and I think if I just look at our audience, Prof. Panos, they are a lot from health sciences, and I guess that has to do with a lot of large classes. Okay, so in a short discussion with Prof. Panos, it seems like this strategy is working well for them, so I hope you are going to get what you need. And please engage and ask questions.
Yes.
He's very open to that. We'll have a short break during the course of the morning. Coffee is at the back, so if you feel you can't take it anymore, you need some caffeine, please go out and have yourself a coffee, and you can bring it in. Okay, so thank you, Prof. Panos. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the people I already know, and welcome to the new faces, and welcome to our online people. I hope you can hear us, and we will be taking questions from everybody. Just quickly for the new people to add to the introduction, as we said, I've been spending a number of years, over 17 years now, traveling in different countries, primarily English-speaking countries, New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, and the UK, of course, where I studied and did all my studies. My main responsibility in my position now at Macquarie over the last 5 years is to make sure that whatever we do in terms of learning, teaching, assessment, and feedback for students is aligned with both strategic priorities of Australia, the higher education system in Australia, but primarily what happens within Macquarie University, which is a very distinct university for Australian. We are based in Sydney. We are a large metropolitan university, 41,000 students approximately, 5 faculties from science, engineering, arts and humanities, human science, which involves psychology education, so we have a separation there between the humanities and the human science, health, medicine and health science, and Faculty of Business and Economics. So we cover pretty much everything. I'm based myself in the Faculty of Arts, 11 departments, ranging from any language. We offer the biggest range of languages, 10 languages plus ancient languages that I never even heard of myself, apart from ancient Greek and Latin, Hebrew and Coptic, and just mention it. But I'm also affiliated when it comes to things like team-based learning with the Faculty of Medicine and Health Science, when I was for approximately 2 years the Associate in Learning and Teaching there. And we proposed this methodology for one of their courses. So the majority of the time today, which is actually a lengthy workshop, but it's a workshop, so we need to find the best way also to accommodate our online people, is to understand team-based learning as a distinct methodology, because it is a distinct methodology, although it's very straightforward team-based learning, you know, my thing, we are doing it. Give it a go, so I'm going to provide us an opportunity actually to try it out in groups, and we'll see with the online people it might be slightly, we can make it work, I'm confident we'll find a way to make it work with an online quiz, and then present you the findings of our now 1.5 years of implementation of this methodology, both in health but also in human science and the humanities, which is totally distinct ways of doing it. And as we speak, I would like also to get your feedback. Having said that, it is important to understand that team-based learning has a particular sequence of activities, and it's almost like not copyrighted necessarily methodology, but if you do team-based learning, there are particular things that they should take place. So we spent the time and we developed a fully comprehensive website that I think you all should have access to, but I'll make sure that we email it. And I printed, I share with you, and they printed a number of resources we have developed for our academics. These are only half of the guides we have available. So we have available very much a guide for everything. What it is, how does it work, how do you set it up, what advice do you give to students, the training guides. So actually you can take it and reuse it if you feel that's the way to do it. Okay? Can I get a quick feel around you? How many of you teach classes over, let's say, 100 students? Okay? And between over 100. Yeah? Between 50 and 100? Okay? And anything between 10 and 50? Okay. Now, what is a large class is very much also discipline specific. So in our university, 25 students in languages is a large class. In medicine, 500 students in a course is considered an okay class that we accept it and we can use it. In Faculty of Business and Engineering, 1,500 students in macroeconomics is also a large class, but you have to deal with that. In other areas of humanities, there could be anything between, I mean, criminology, we have around 800 students in introduction to criminology units in one module, in one venue. When it comes to lectures, okay, and that will be now, I'm trying to make the starting point for why we thought the methodology is important. So the complexity of the university is that we have typically lectures, tutorials, and any kind of other informal activities for our students to do. A traditional lecture at Macquarie has a duration of, in a sequence of 50 minutes. So 50 minutes, it could be like 50 minutes with a little break, roughly, let's say, up to 2 hours altogether. And then there will be a tutorial of around 2 hours. So collectively, per module, they will be getting 4 to 5 hours contact time per module. A full workload for a student in a full-time study pattern will be 4 modules in a semester. Okay, so 4 by 4 makes it around 16 hours of contact time for the students in the class in some sort of environment, plus all the other informal activities that might take place. The majority of these activities, they take place either in the amphitheaters or the different theaters, and we have a range of them. The biggest one is the Macquarie Theatre, holds, if I'm right, around 580 students. So there are some repeats of the lecture or live streaming of the lecture, which is actually our newest development. We live stream anything over 200 students, so we can accommodate them from that kind of point of view. So we are now in a position to discuss at Macquarie our new curriculum. We are developing a brand new curriculum of everything for 2020, which is literally in a few months' time. Yeah, so don't tell me how fast we move, but we are trying. To do that, as part of our strategic framework, we are still looking for what we call signature pedagogies, or signature approaches to learning and teaching. And what is a signature approach? Means it is a prescribed approach that the university embraces, and they want to systematize it across a particular way of doing things. So the proposal at the moment is, how can we turn our big lectures, and by big could be anything, yeah, the 25 in languages to the 1,500 in FBE, how can we turn them to a different type of event, a different type of thing? Because I've just completed a piece of research with 900 students. Between weeks 2 and weeks 10, participation drops by 70 to 80%. Full stop. We look and the trend goes, they come, they see you, welcome, that's the cost, that's the outcomes, that's the assessment, that's the deadlines, and I'll see you back when you talk about the exam. And that's how it goes. Yeah? And that came very strongly, regardless live streaming or face-to-face. It's a very, very interesting thing. So the university is looking, well, we do have the venues, we do want students to be in the class. Is there a methodology that it will still fulfill the needs of a discipline-specific content, concept, in the way that the lecture is providing, with clarifications and inputs from the academics, but it will bring the students in the class and it will bring them in a prepared world. Going through literature reviews, most of you will be familiar with problem-based learning, PBL, case-based learning, just teamwork or active learning, just name it. I think, again, if we look in the literature, it will be definitions. Most of the case-based learning, team-based learning methodologies that they exist, they also have different variations. Yeah? And you normally get the idea that, okay, there is a case, and then I'm going to develop a number of questions, and I'm going to ask my students to do a couple of investigations, literature searches, whatever you want. I'm going to bring them into the class, and then I'm going to try to solve the case. But it takes all different formats and all different ways, depending on the ability of the academic or the training of the academic to sustain a case-based learning, but also the appetite of the student to get preparation for a case-based learning. So where we fail in PBL and case-based learning is students buying in to the preparation. If you do case-based learning in real world, which you all do, we all solve cases on a daily basis, including today. We're going to try to solve if this methodology can work. We all do most of us at least, we do our preparation. We know what we are talking about. We have our definitions. We have everything. But the students, as you know, they won't see why I should prepare for a lecture. Is the lecture where they will give me the input, and then I'm going to take my notes, and I'm going to come and play it back to you in an exam. And that's how the whole thing. So TBL is one of the methodologies that we thought provides enough structure and enough buy-in for the students to come in and engage in the process while meeting the expectations of all this kind of problem-based and case-based learning, like the complexity of a case. Is any of you familiar with the methodology anyway before, or it is the very first time you're coming across? Okay. In Australia, it's catching up over the last few years, primarily in medicine and health. But myself, I've seen it working in humanities. I came across a large University of Texas in Houston. I didn't go there, but I read a lot about it, that they implemented across all the disciplines, law, literature, just name it. And I became very much interested both what it is, how can it work, and actually does it work. So we also have a piece of research around it that I'm going to share with you. Can I ask how many of you do you use any other type of collaborative learning, and what is that in your classes? Any kind of team-based, in your own ways, and if you can just give us a quick description.
I will give them two opposing topics.
Yes.
We're from the dietetics department.
Dietetics, yes.
So I would give them two scenarios which can either be right, and then we debate. So there's a lot of actual debate and until they are confused.
And that takes place in the class?
Yes.
And preparation before or after?
Yeah, they get their topics before, and then they can go and prepare their approach, and then when we come back to the class, then the different groups debate, and then the class participate in the debate.
Okay, thank you. Roughly how many hours do you run an event like that?
Well, we will usually do it in about an hour and a half.
An hour and a half, okay. That's typical, thank you. Any other approaches? Please, we can pass the microphone so our...
Good morning, colleagues. I'm in the language class, so what I usually do, I let them design a lesson plan because they are teachers to be students.
Yes.
So they design a lesson plan,
and
then after 2 or 3 days, they come and present it as a team.
Okay.
So they have to discuss the activities of that lesson, the resources, and everything that has to happen in the class for different grades.
Perfect.
Yes.
And do you find the team formation and the way that they go about, is that something that is straightforward? They just go and they collaborate?
Yes, they just go. They know well that because students are marks based.
Yes.
They know very well if they don't take part, if they don't collaborate, there's no mark.
Okay.
So because they want the marks, they just have to.
It's a good point. We keep this point, assessment and team-based learning, and I will come back to that as part of the presentation. Thank you very much for that. You get the microphone so we can have our... Thank you.
The jigsaw method as a method for collaboration,
Yes.
where teams are working together and in such a way that knowledge is internalized in at least 4 different ways in a single lesson. So I find the jigsaw approach very, very suitable.
Very suitable. Perfect. Yes.
And I just want to add from Mafeking campus, there's a comment that they say that they use problem-based learning and case-based learning in the School of Nursing.
School of Nursing, absolutely, yes. That will be definitely the case over there. Can I ask, when it comes to any kind of collaborative team learning, what are the challenges that you think you face and the students face? So are there any challenges in trying to do any kind of these collaborative approaches?
Hi, yes, I'm from law, and as you know, we're very challenging individuals always. So albeit it can be marks based, there's usually personality clashes because the stronger student and a weaker student don't gel because the one coasts off the other one. We also have those that don't really enjoy working as a team. They would prefer to work on their own. So those are my challenges. So in certain modules, for some unknown reason, the same student will flourish in a team-based, and then in other modules, they just refuse. So I'm not sure whether it goes to content or more personality, but my experience has been more personality.
Personality-driven. It's actually a very accurate comment about students' expectations, and then depending on the student's performance, what actually they think is the contribution that they give and what they take out of a team approach. Thank you. You had a comment? We can wait maybe for the microphone, or just to keep our people engaged in the online space.
Where there are different programs in a class, different degrees, it's sometimes difficult for those students to get together after class because their programs are different.
Yeah, it's a good remark, actually, this one. From your point of view, like you as a designer or an academic who is preparing for a team-based, what are some of are there any challenges or concerns or anything you have?
Students don't understand the advantages that are in there for them to work collaboratively with others.
Yes.
And I think we sometimes assume that they know how to work in groups. They don't, so it's a lack of skill.
Yes.
And that is something that we purposefully must teach our students how to do. And I just think it's a lack of skills. I can remember the first time I had to work in a group, and where I am now, group work is it's nice for me now, but in the beginning I didn't know what to do and how to, so lack of skills, I suppose.
Very, very important remark about expecting people, and sometimes, undergraduate students, they will arrive having their own norms and etiquettes of what collaboration is. Like, I choose to work with someone, I don't like to work with anyone, and all these kind of things. And they have to learn the skill of collaboration as a professional skill. And that's one of the promises of TBL. Thank you. And there was a comment, yes?
Yes, I wanted to add to what she is saying, because at one stage I picked it up that my students, the other one was passing, and then the other one was saying, okay, I'll see you at 5, just do that section and I'll do this section.
Yes.
So if they don't have, I don't know.
It is. And
so as she's saying, it's important to let them realize the importance of collaboration. They must be taught what the strategy is and what are the benefits, of it. Yes.
And there's a difference between working in a team as an individual, and this is what a lot of the students will do. They will divide the workload, and they will say, in this team, you are let's say, best in analyzing. You do the analysis. You are best in, I don't know, doing the editing and wrapping it up and putting it into the Word document. You are gonna go and do the editing. And you are, our clever person who does the literature review. You do all the literature review. And we meet half an hour before the report is back, and we glue the things together. And then they get, all of them, 90%, even the one who just did the editing, and the one who actually did the thinking around it. That's one of the biggest challenges. Thank you. Have comments?
Okay, so Irene Miller from the online space, she says, challenge to select group members, divide the students in group. Is it your choice or theirs? What works best? And then another thing is, I guess, from the lecturer's side, is that if things doesn't work in this group work or setting, it becomes your problem. So you get a lot of emails, you get a lot of students coming to your office trying to ask you to solve their problem. So that is, I think, a challenge.
No, thank you for these comments from our online participants. The challenge of group formation is, in the literature, I think, number 2 as a challenge. And team-based learning actually addresses this in a very, very particular, crystal clear way. And we're going to talk about it. So there are particular principles that they make team-based learning a methodology, and you need to see whether you are comfortable with this or not. But it is one of the big things. Going back a bit to the concept of complaints, becomes your problem if things don't work. Universities also, they have policies. They actually drive more and more strict policies, at least in Australia, of what they expect in a team assessment. So we revised our own policy literally 9 or 10 months ago to include that any teamwork outcome, whatever it is, comprises of individual work and teamwork. And it should be 60-40, or a variation of that, but not, it will never be 50-50, it has to be 60-40, 70-30, depending what you want to give more. And the theory behind it is that students, they will get an individual mark for exactly the type of thing that they contributed to, and they have to meet all the criteria of literature searching, writing the report, editing it as an individual, and then they will get a mark for the group outcome altogether, which is what you give to an external person to read, which also aligns quite well now. We didn't know about TBL at the time, but aligns relatively well. Do you have this kind of detail in your policies? Not yet, okay.
But we actually call them guidelines.
Guidelines, yes. Yes, okay. For us, actually, it's an assessment policy. So there is a particular mention, a particular point that says that. So if you, as the academic, propose it in a module team assessment, you have to show to the Associate in Quality and Standards who approves it how you're going to do this 64 to 70-30. So we took it to that because of the enormous amount of complaints around team-based. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I would also want to ask the lecturers, if you are interested in something like this and you see it can work in your modules, we have to escalate that, whether through CTL, but I guess it's first your faculty, yes. The teaching learning committee, and start asking for something else, because our faculties actually have a bit of leeway to define their own rules or
yes.
Set their own guidelines. So I think it's necessary. We are in a stage where we are revising our policies, and we need to, if we feel that there's a movement towards something, we need to challenge our current
yes.
policies.
And I think if we take seriously collaboration, teamwork as a professional skill, we need to get methodologies, but also fair approach to assessment and feedback, so they know how they are developing. It works well when you can give feedback to someone and say, you were great as an individual contributor, but you have done nothing based on the feedback from your team in terms of the skills of teamwork. You never turn up for meetings, you never did that. You just did excellent, an individual piece of work that contributed to that. And you can have a different type of dialogue in that. So far, so good? Okay, let's start with the team-based learning. That's pretty much what I have in mind, what it is, and you all have also the guides. I hope our online participants, they have access to the PDFs. We share with you a number of guides that are actually straightforward, I think, guys. It's more visual than writing. We try to make it like that. They are all also freely available in our website for TBL, which I'm going to share with you, including with a number of videos and case studies for you to look around. Then I will try to work with you. Sorry,
Prof. I know yes? A bit delayed, but it's early in the semester. Is there no way... I was just thinking, we're saying these guidelines and assessment and whatever.
Yes.
Could we not flip it, for lack of a better word, and use it to teach problem-solving skills? So, for example, I've tried the thing of putting the same degree, having a mixed class of different degrees, telling them you choose 10 members, but it has to be within the same degree. I've let them choose whoever they want. I haven't gone the route of saying you go, because I don't know them well enough at that
yes.
stage to divide them like that. But when they've done that with me, I've said, okay, well, technically, because in our case it might be easier, I guess, you started a firm. And I said to them, you're all directors, but you're all directors of different aspects.
Yes.
So one is of HR, one is of management, one is of finance or whatever. And I said, well, internalize it. Use your HR policy
yes.
to resolve the problem, so that when our students in particular go out, then they know you've got to go internally before you escalate the whole time. Yes. Is that maybe a way of solving the complaints, or did I miss the boat totally?
It is one, yeah, and PBL, the way that you describe problem-based learning, it's actually one of the most powerful methodologies. The challenge we have with PBL, as you described it, is that, and it will sound a bit awkward, it is democratic and vague, that if you are skilled in team-based learning, you can actually engage fully with that. If you are not, and you still need to learn the habits of collaboration, it does not necessarily provide the structures. And that's where we found a lot of difficulties in that case. And we're looking for a methodology that it will put the students in a system to learn to trust each other in a more controlled way. It's a bit of oxymoron, yeah, what I'm saying here, but like get this kind of intensive approach to collaboration in almost forced collaboration in the way that TBL works. But it has some dynamic things about competition and you know, like how you can contribute better as a team member because your scores will be better. It's driven a bit by theory of games and gamification, which also has a lot of a catch-up now in modern theories of motivation, and produces at the end. So my feeling is that we've done TBL and now we open it up to more case-based and more PBL with some of our students. So, but I personally would also like to start the class directly by just saying, you know, you are all adults, you are all in a complex world that collaboration happens, and no one denies that. You know, just find your way, fight your fights, learn. It's a different way of thinking. But the TBL, when it comes to 500 students, 700 students, 900 students, or 25 students in the languages, you need to have a methodology that will bring them together and not lose half of them on the way. Okay? Now, the TBL in action, it will be a little experimental, meaning that I think here we will be able to do it relatively well. For our online participants, they will be able to do part of it, and then I will explain the action you will have to take. Okay, so you need to follow different instructions. And then I'm going to talk to you about the research that we've done with 3 classes, the things that they work, and the challenges that we still face with TBL. Is that right? But as we go, we just talk, ask questions, and we clarify for that. Now, that's rule 1 in TBL. Whatever you do in TBL, the very first thing you need to ensure in the class is that people, they introduce themselves. So you definitely have something to know about the neighbors next to you before you do it. That's rule 1 in TBL. You know your immediate people, and then we try to say that we know that we have a diverse group. In our case now I look around and we have a gender issue, but that's okay. We are not very diverse, but at least we can be part of it. You are in touch with you're over. Students, they are alerted to the fact that they will have to be prepared to move, yeah, to form, and then also be prepared to ask questions and clarifications. So take 60 seconds to the person in your row. Just tell one thing about yourself that is very interesting. You consider it to be an interesting thing about yourself. No. Could be anything. Could be about work, could be about personal life. Like share an interesting fact about yourself, just to break the ice. Now imagine this happening with 800 students, there will be noise. So TBL rule 1, there is noise. Yeah? When you are at this point, there is noise. If there is no noise, there's something is not working. Okay? So we start with that and make some noise. Online people, maybe in the online space, type in one fact about yourself so people they can see each other. join us. Please. No, it's okay. What we're doing is I just ask people in the same row just to introduce themselves quickly, just who you are, if you don't know each other, something interesting about yourself. Guys, if there is some space, can we charge this one? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, can we come back as a big team now? Thank you. I hope it's good to hear noise and laughs. That warms up the class. It's very, very important. Now, in a typical TBL session, the students, they've done that, and you already know, or you should know, something about the students more than their names. For example, you may want to know if they have a particular background, if they have a particular performance already. So the teams that you will form for the TBL sessions, they are purposely built. So we do not allow at all students to form their own groups. There's no self-selection in TBL. There is different ways of you to put parameters of the groups, but normally the students on arrival in a TBL session, either they will be given a particular color, you find a way to create the teams, but you will allocate them to teams. They don't know that immediately when they arrive. That's why so you allow them a bit to come and they talk to each other. But then there will be maybe 5 minutes, and that's important when you plan. That's only for the introductory session, yes? That they will come and then they will move around to form a team. So if I knew, for example, now that there are in this row everybody is from the same faculty, I will more likely blend you if I had the information. And I will say, well, health people with human science, you are diverse enough, I like it, you stay. You guys, you have to come on the front, and there will be a 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how big the class is, of moving around, that you allocate it and you plan for in the team. So you have to have enough information. Normally, we try to have information about the academic background. If they are year 1 students, you may have enough information about their scores, their discipline, their university, the exams, the results. You might have information about their, well, obviously about their discipline, and within health you might have one module that attracts from 3 different, from physio and nursing and so on, and you might want to blend them together. But you try to have as diverse as possible groups, including gender ratios. I mean, you try to blend it, because it does play a lot when it comes to influencing each other. Okay? So we've done that. In the online space, if you try to do TBL in an online space, it's slightly easier, meaning that using an LMS, a learning management system, you may already have groups created on the LMS and students being assigned. So actually on arrival, they might be direct into the space. In the physical space, you will have to pretty much make it. Once the groups are formed, I'm going to come to that, these are the groups for the whole session, all the 12 weeks. Whether you like it, you hate each other, whatever, you have to stick and continue with this one. Because there's all this kind of elements there to learn to be together, but also enough for you to prove yourself, like the individual component of the TBL. Okay? Now this is just a bit for the introduction, like how it's going to feel like for you if you're going to be running TBL. I've seen some very interesting ways of putting them. having like little colored stickers sometimes are quite good. They're very cheap, like and then they are the red team and they are the green team, and then they get the point. Oh, we're going to be actually a team. We're going to have a name. Maybe there's going to be a competition element to the TBL, and it gets very interesting from that point of view. Personally, I like to have something very simple. I might have already names of teams. We have the people in this clinical science. They use the games of thrones, different groupings, and they say, okay, you belong to that particular, the north, and you belong, and then there's the ultimate fight. You keep going until the very last TBL to see who's going to be the winner. And they already told them there is a prize at the end of week 12 for the TBL. That's the extreme gamification. It works quite well. In humanities, what we've done we asked them actually to come with a name themselves. So, you are the team here, find a good name. The more of these things you do in session 1, the more time it takes, so plan for it. But all of it should be sorted in the preparation session, like week 1 or 0 week, whatever you have for the TBL. Okay? Just a bit of the background of how it feels in a classroom to be in a TBL. Now, the main thing of TBL is that belongs directly into this idea of a flipped classroom. Okay? Does not mean technology flipped classroom necessarily. You can do TBL with using zero technology apart from some sort of visual and presentation. Yeah? You can actually do TBL by using fully paper-based. And we'll see 2 videos that they show both evidence for that. But the main thing is that there is a flipping approach and an expectation that there is preparation. There is preparation that sometimes is very heavy, and I will share you the results. On average, the students, they triple the amount they spend studying the content before they come, and that's facts from the literature. So if they spend an hour and a half reading, they will spend 3 to 4 hours preparation to come to a TBL, and they will enjoy it, and they will say they want to do more of that. So that's a positive thing, yeah? That they actually move and they do a lot before the class. Then there is the in-class activities, where your job is nothing what I'm doing now. Yeah? Your job is there on the side to step in when the students, they've done their activities and you have to clarify. And then you could add, if you want, and there are a few different models, you can add a post-class activity, and normally there will be more a blog, an evaluation of how the team worked, very much like to evaluate what they learned from the particular class and how the team collaborated. So normally I've seen it taking the form of a reflective journal or a blog or so on, but it's not additional heavy cognitive work like more readings or anything like that. But there is a linkage. Make sense? Sorry, go on.
The exit slip, something like that as well? Could you use the exit slip for that post instead of a blog or whatever?
Yeah, you can do that, absolutely, yes. Yeah, it would work well. But in a very typical thing, what we care about the TBL is the before and the class. The after normally is left to follow to other type of activities. They're not part of the methodology. But in our university, we added reflection as a post element of the TBL. Okay, so far? Online, anyone so far questions? We are okay? Yes, I hope so. The full selection, the full range of TBL, and that's why I said it's a very prescribed methodology, involves these stages. The individual pre-class work that takes place before they arrive in the class. Typically, they will involve readings, and the methodology actually was established in the 1970s in a business school because they had issues with students understanding concepts in large classrooms, so they had no way of collaborating with them. So they wanted them to spend enough time to scrutinize the concepts and the ideas. I don't think anyone here believes that students should come to your class without at least knowing some basic stuff, because that makes the class a very, very difficult thing. Yeah, like imagine you coming here without having even a basic understanding of what collaboration is, and I'm trying now to take you to the team the TBL, will face a lot of issues. So there is a lot of readings that they do. You can do other things. You can still play the videos, you can still ask them to watch things, but these are all part of the pre-class activity. Okay? Then they arrive in the class, and the very first thing that they will do, always, in all 12 sessions, or 13, how many you're going to plan, there's going to be an IRAT test, which is practically a quiz. But it's not a quiz that is factual. It's not just, you know, what is TBL, blah, blah, blah. It should be a quiz that contains all kinds of the challenging questions that they will lead then to the problem that you will need to introduce in the application activity. So on a scale of a 15-minute session for the first part, you want this quiz not to last more than 5 minutes. So around 10 questions is on average what they expect to see in a formal TBL IRAT test. Yeah, 10 questions. You may want to shorten it up. You may want to have 5 questions, but they might be slightly more complicated. Yeah. So they've done that, and they know that they have to do that, and that's a given. So they know that this class, this year, will run through 12 individual tests. And there is a discussion in the literature whether this thing carries credits or whether no, and there is the final product of the TBL that carries credit. In our university, because I told you about the policy, the 60-40, we assign a proportion of the mark of the TBL activity also for the individual test, which is not the average score of everybody, but a combination of selected scores that they got in very particular weeks that the lecturer believes are the important ones. So it could be like the scores in weeks 3, 7, and 9, the average of them. There's different ways of doing it. The reason behind it is that the first 2 weeks they might be still learning, they might be quite low level, but they might have a very negative impact on the mark. And the more the TBL, because it builds, you know, every thing builds to the other. So all the knowledge from the previous is almost replicated in the next one, and so on. So the higher the scores, you expect them to be in the higher results later on in the weeks. That's the IRAT. And it could be a quiz that takes the place in a online thing, the quiz on Sakai or whatever, or it could be simply a paper-based quiz, always multiple choice. Yeah, there's no space there for open writing. They're always multiple choice, but they are relatively detailed. They're not just one words, very easy to do. Yeah, so that's, and we'll see an example of that in a bit. So they get this quiz. There are tools outside that they are purposely built for TBL, that they administer these quizzes, and they also let you have a dashboard. So as the students, they do their individual tests, you get on a dashboard for the individual student how they go. So you'll see this, like out of the class, at the individual level, 60% of the students, they haven't answered this question correctly. So you get a bit of a feeling how the class is doing at an individual level. If you don't have the tool to do it, you'll just collect it and you'll see it later. But students, they don't get results for that. They submit their question and they wait. That's the individual test. The third thing, if you also put the individual pre-class thing that takes place, then you turn to your students and you just say to them, you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on your workload, how much you're going to allocate. You need to talk about your answers. What did you answer and why? Convince each other, and then you will retake exactly the same quiz, but this time as a team. And that's why. So if I tell you that you 4 on here, you are one team, you will now be given 5 minutes to convince each other to why question is A, B, C, D, whatever it is. You have to show all the influential skills. If you are the very good student, you will be extremely dominant and shouting on the one side in the class. If you are the student who does not have a clue, you're going to be looking around. But they warm up as we speak. At the end of the day, the person who is going to be the responsible for clicking the button and that rotates needs to make sure we agree to disagree or whatever, but we submit now question B. So there's another quiz that opens up, but this time the quiz has the team's name that you agreed. So you just type in your team's name, whatever it is the team A, B, C, D, or so on. They submit this quiz, and you, the lecturer, at that point, if you have a technology, you should be able to see exactly what the team said, and you can reveal the scores and say, as part of this activity, the team that had the best thing is X. If you don't have, by just using this, A, B, this is the answers, yeah, that's the human multiple choice quiz. So if I was giving you this one over here, guys, and I will tell you, do you believe that team-based learning is potentially a good methodology? Give me D if you believe, C if it is, D if it is not. You already have to negotiate, and then you will say, okay, I'm gonna go with D or the C, and you will have the discussion, and you're gonna put that, and that's good enough, okay? And already you have done it in your paper base. You have your team name, so I collect it. I know what the team has voted for. Now, once this is happening, and this is now become to the important point, it's very important that the questions are enough complex, maybe put that way, that they are not straightforward. So it's not obvious, or they need to do something about it. Like a typical question in law, it could be, these are, what will be the most correct interpretation of the word feminism? And you will find potentially 4 that they've been already. They are all correct. But one of it perhaps is the most contemporary, the one that the particular state believes in. Or you might want to give this kind of detail that is a bit ambiguous. It's almost like asking you, do you believe that TBL is likely to improve professional skills? You might be convinced, you might not be convinced, and you might totally not be convinced. And you have a totally agree to somehow agree to disagree. There's no right or wrong answer, but the team needs to agree with arguments, and you will say, oh, what's wrong? It's all good, it's clear, I like it. Yes, but it's very boring and repetitive. And you will say, it will never work in my class because I have so many people, I'm not convinced at all. But you will have to come to an agreement, and that's the negotiation thing that takes in the PBL. However, the opportunity of appeals is there. So this is where you step in as the academic, and you say, are there any questions? And some people say, oh, I think question A was not phrased correctly. I didn't like the way you phrased. You should not be mentioning the word feminism there, because it has very political thing. You should have said, this thing. Or in this literature it's mentioned like that. Can we rephrase the question? You take any appeals that you want to do, and that is part of them being able to have a dialogue and an influential discussion with you. In medicine, it will be a lot, and I've seen it happening a lot. When you have a case, you might have a particular X-ray up there, and it is part of the quiz, and they're watching it, and they have an appeal, and they say, well, you should have given us the more background information about the patient before we will be able to confidently. Whereas the other team there didn't worry that there was no information, whether it's a male or female. And they have the appeal, please add this for next time, and you keep building it. There's a question?
An online question. They ask if the IRAT tests can be taken before class on our learning management system, or should it be done in class?
The IRAT test the answer is it should always be in a TBL session. So my answer is in class. When you have fully distanced learners, and I'm going to show you an example of that, it becomes a different thing, and it should be a timed online quiz. So still the students, they are not physically in the class, but they are all at 5 o'clock in the afternoon taking this quiz. to avoid any kind of possibility that they will have other interactions. So, and that's a bit the thing about the fully distance learnings and TBL, that to run it, you need to synchronize the distance learners. They need to put 1 hour of their time to come there, because then you might need to do a Zoom session or a Skype session to take clarifications and so on. To run it fully asynchronously through discussion board and so on, it won't be exactly that model. It will be a version of it. Yeah, that's absolutely. And we tried. Unfortunately, we tried with fully online learners, and they dropped it. Like they really, really dropped the class. They didn't enjoy it because they couldn't synchronize. It was not fitting their work patterns. So one thing to advocate at the moment is it's working better exactly in the way we are describing today for events that they are more kind of flipped and blended, that the students are coming in the class. But using the Sakai system and the quiz as opposed to this it allows you to have the archive, it's more accurate, it's different. But if technology goes back, I always have backup. I always have a copy of this. It's nothing. It's just 5 cards, colored cards that you can use. Once the appeals take place, then we move to what we call a clarification session. And the clarification session can take 2 different ways. One is that you assign the teams the role of clarifying particular things in the discussion. So I might actually say, now there's a clarification session, and there are, based on what I've seen in the results, the most difficult question was whether you like TBL or not, and how do we form groups. So there's 2 points that everybody, it's messed up, it's not clear, the team is not clear as a team altogether. So it's worthwhile now spending time to clarify. But I won't spend time on what is TBL, because it's 100% correct. Everybody agreed that that's the answer. So you save time of your lecture, not to waste it on clarifying things they already know because they studied and they understood, and you clarify in depth the 2-3 things that they are not clear. And some people, they do it because you already know, either by the way that they kept their cards or by the dashboard, which teams they got the right answer and which the wrong answer. You can actually say, okay, you guys said that TBL is not yet a methodology. Can you please clarify your reasoning? And they will be prepared to stand and say, yes, we discussed this and this and this, and we came to the conclusion that we cannot adapt it. And you guys said that actually you are ready to use it. Can you please clarify your point? And they will do it. Now, depending on the contextual thing, you might want to give them something that they will write and they can clarify. You can give them 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But the clarification session, it could easily run between 15 minutes and half an hour, depending on how many questions you have and how many answers they are very, very wrong. And at that point, normally we will have a break. And in a Macquarie way, which is, as I said, a 50-minute session followed by tutorials in the afternoon, or potentially even the following day, depending if you can schedule them. But for the TBL, we try to schedule them on the same day if we can, a lecture and a tutorial. The lecture has been replaced by the 2 tests, the appeals and the clarification. And then the tutorial has been replaced with the application activity. And the application activity is, okay, now we clarified what TBL is, we clarify that we like it, we clarify that we know the methodology, we clarify that there are concerns, and now let's come in the afternoon and design our first TBL questionnaire. So let's now use this opportunity, and it will be very much a PBL case-based learning thing that you will turn that. And we call this an application activity. It will be 1 or 2 questions, very clear. Once they finish that, then you have all the information, you wait, and you come to the next class. And the next class, you have the pre-readings that they build on the case that you just discussed. They do it, and then builds and so on. So you have to have a sequence of learning that links to each other for these 10, 12, 13 weeks. Do not introduce random things all over the place, because it's not going to work really well. Make sense? Okay.
Love it.
So that I like it a lot as well. Now, variations in the literature. large versus small classes. The largest class, we run it as we speak at Macquarie. It will be our big history unit that will attract around 300 students. The smallest class that we run it is in French with 22 students. Both, they do exactly the same thing, but in languages, for example, because they have smaller amounts of students, they might actually do more extended application activities, they might do more thorough appeals, and so on. And in the others, they might actually do a much more robust and concise. From 2 hours, and that is inclusive of the application activities, to full day, if you run a big simulation, in a big case in medicine that normally might take you even a couple of weeks to sort out, you might want to introduce it. In law, I've seen, as they prepare for their moot courts, in preparation for the moot courts, they might actually have an intensive week of that clarifying, debating, and doing it. Several weeks is where people, they don't have the time, and they only are able to do IRATs, TRATs, clarifications, but on a series of events, and then they only do applications after they run 3 events. So the application is not necessarily that you have to have an application in each week. You may want to say that the application will be more complicated, and it will run in week 4. So I'm going to do 3 TBLs that they take us all the way to clarification, and then I'm going to have a big day that's going to be my application. So you can break it, mix it, and move things. But in the whole of the session, like the whole 12 weeks, you need to have done all of this to some extent, which is good. It gives you the freedom to mix and match. Additional steps in the process, there are reflections, and there are presentations. These are the 2 most commonly added things to the methodology. The reflection could take place immediately after the application activity. A presentation can take place before the clarification session. You can actually ask people to come and present the results from their team in a particular way. You may want to add more assessment if you wish. It's down to you. You want to add a more summative assessment at the end. But there are variations in the process, and I think depending on the discipline, you will do it. And then is the ways of assessing. The most common assessment is the split between IRAT, TRAT, and what is the application activity output, which is the report. A lot of them, they do provide opportunities for students to be assessed only at a later stage of the TBL. So they give them the first few weeks almost like they're not assessed for the IRATs and the TRATs, and they only assess them after they master a bit the process. But my feeling is if you add a bit of, and there's no assessment at all, it's just you're doing it for the glory of being the team and winning the cup of some sort. Or you are doing it and because you are going to be getting something out of it as a team. Like it might not be a physical, like a gift or money or a book, but you might actually say that, all right, we are going to be visiting the High Court in Australia, and we only can take 20 students, and we want to take the 20 best students in the class. So I'm going to be using TBL to see who is going to come there. I've seen in Faculty of Business, we are going to be hosting an event with CEOs from different companies. We want people that can talk and influence and articulate. The TBL winners will be the ones joining us. Or in medicine, we are going to be visiting a particular hospital to see this new beautiful simulation. We are doing it. Some people, they freak out. Equality, what it's all about, but that's a bit in the nature of the competition. You just say that you provide this as a hook, and then anyway, that was the intention for that activity. Always you will actually have a selected group based on their scores. Personally, I think it takes a lot of effort for the students. As I said, they might actually be studying, which is good, double the amount, give them something. Like say, if typically, can I ask what type of assessments do you do normally? Okay, like 2 or 3 pieces of assessment? Yeah. Typically, you might do in the class an essay, a report, and maybe an exam. Or if you don't have the exam, you might have 2 essays and a literature review. You may want to sacrifice one of these 20% or 30% for the TBL, especially if the final big essay, the 50%, actually builds on the application activities that they are preparing for, and you can actually create it around it. So my advice is give them something, give them the prize, give them the award. It might be just something that, like sometimes we give them vouchers for a book, like something random, just to keep them going. But ways of assessing, yes, put assessment because it's very important for them to do it. Do you have any questions from here or from the online? Go on. There is one question. Maybe we can wait.
Are there any guidelines as to how big a team should be?
Yes, there are. And I will come to that. The straight answer is between 5 and 7. That's what the literature suggests. If you go with 3, you will end up having this division of the one doing the work and the other 2 just doing nothing. If you go over 8 and 9, then actually they split within teams themselves. 5 and 7, they said, is one of the, it's a good number to have a TBL. In a class of 800 students, though, I've seen it with 10, strictly 10 people in the team, and there are a lot of 10s in the team, how they go. Okay? And these are all also in one of the guidelines that I gave you, which is about preparing for TBL. It talks about how to select the groups, what parameters we can think, and what is the formation of a group. The important thing, to go back to it, it is not self-formed. You are forming them, and you are using criteria to form them. And they are permanent, full stop. Even if the person is keep arguing that this is not the case, that's how the students, they know that from the beginning when they do their induction. It's a permanent group. Now let's see if this will work. To show you an example of how it feels from Macquarie, like I'm going to show you an example of a class doing a TBL, so you can see a bit how it works. Do I live there? So that's our main resource at the moment. Where we have explanations of the things and all the guides. So there are like 6 guides that we have developed. What I'm doing? Yeah, you don't see. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Now you should be able to see. Okay. So that's the website about TBL. And these are 6 guides that we have developed. There is the introduction, a student guide, which is a PDF, but if you are interested, we can also sell it as a Word document, which means then you can edit it to add your own stuff, because you will add your own logos and things. We have a design for you, how to design step-by-step a TBL. We have a selection for you, whether you're going to do LMS, a bespoke tool, or just scratch cards, and what tool can you use, tips, and a checklist to make sure that you have them there. But they are all freely available as PDFs. You can just download them, from our Macquarie website. Okay. Let's see if this thing will work. That's a lot. We're very proud of it. So that's now the buzz that happens in the room. We try to add a timer if possible. Just go to Google Timer, put it there, 5 minutes, you speed it, you stop. Clarifications? Clarifications made by the students. And then their application. So that's a typical TBL, which includes PBL, problem-based learning, as the application. Let's go live though, let's actually listen from the students. This was more of the summary, but I think this one gives us a bit.
Team-based learning is a methodology that allows us to get the students to work together in small groups to try and further their own understanding of a topic. And so it's a bit of a structured approach which sees the teacher's role becoming very much one of a facilitator, and it involves the students taking a real lead and custodianship of their own learning, which I find quite exciting.
They get to apply knowledge learnt previously in the preparation materials. So they can be readings, they can be videos, they can be online lectures. They come to class and they take an individual quiz. – 10 to 15 questions usually is the sweet spot. Then, once they've completed that, they undertake the exact same quiz, the same questions, but they have opportunity to talk to each other, talk to their teammates, debate and kind of collaborate on what the correct answer is, and they then, as a team, have to elect a single response.
You know, you're sitting in silence and everyone is busily completing their readiness assurance test, and then we open up to team discussion, and there's just deafening roar of student voice where everyone's debating, you know, did you get the answer to that? And I'd love when you'd look up into the room and you'd see, you know, the team that had finally got that question right. Yay! You know, we got it.
You can see them come alive, and there's that natural instinct to kind of, when you come out of the quiz, to say, oh, I really struggled with this, what do you think? So that really gets students engaged.
I found doing tasks individually and then doing it with a team really made a big difference, because I could see other perspectives and kind of how other people thought.
It's really powerful to have students have to identify what they got wrong themselves, as well as then contributing to the discussion and say that I know this is the right answer because. Often you'll see teams who are full of students who aren't necessarily the top performers in the IRAP be the best in the TRAP because they work effectively.
I found it really interesting and at times probably a little bit challenging working with my peers. The way in which we approach things are a little bit different. However, it's not necessarily bad. I think they offered an insight or a perspective that I may have forgotten or not had. It made a difference in a positive way.
A major benefit is that students are actually really doing the teaching. The role of the teacher is radically different in TBL.
So in this session, the clarification
was
the student's job, and the teacher was only correcting misunderstandings. So that was his approach, Dane's approach.
And being prepared.
And you had rather complicated cases.
To keep the discussion moving in the right direction is still very much what we're doing as the teacher and facilitator there. but most of the class time is spent with the student leading the discussion. It's the student voice that's getting heard, not the teacher's voice.
They can be confident if they know they got something right, they can contribute to the discussion and tell their peers how they know it's right in their own words, which I think is key. When you have an academic explain it, often they're coming from a place where they have an understanding of the content so well that they don't speak the same language of the students.
When you're learning from your peers, you're working generally from the same level, as opposed to an academic who might not know necessarily where you're at. So your ability to explain things to each other generally tends to be easy to understand compared to when a lecturer might be explaining something and might go over your head, or it might be too simplistic.
In some cases, the students will get up and they will just answer the questions beautifully. They will clarify for the room and nothing more needs to be said. And I think that could be quite confronting as an educator that's used to doing a lot of talking in the room.
Application activities follow on from the clarification session after the IRAT and TRATs are completed. It's essentially a complex task that draws upon everything the students have been discussing. It's where all the pre-readings, the questions within the RATs come together.
We tend to have fairly structured activities that they do in their group, the end result of which being a written group output, and then at the end of the seminar.
He had 380 students in his TBL in politics.
Focus application activity can foster discussions and debates where they have to back up their thinking, formulate arguments and reasoning as to why they chose their option.
We had a focus application task and they were put into different groups that they already had established, and they had an affirmative team and an opposing team. I think the debate was really good.
So this one, we introduced indigenous perspectives in health, and the application activity was actually to rethink the system of public health in Australia from an indigenous perspective. It lasted for 2 weeks as an application. It was ongoing.
Having them work in
concept maps and all these things
puts a lot of peer pressure on them to contribute.
It was really good because I could step back and allow the students to do the activity themselves and to shine their own abilities. If they had one team member who had already done the prior learning, that person stepped up in their role and guided the rest of the team.
A lot of the other units that we do are independent study, so it's more about how I direct my own learning. With the TBL approach, it's kind of how can I contribute, but how can I learn from my peers at the same time whilst we're learning all this new curriculum.
Some students who traditionally didn't prepare for class saying the only reason I came prepared to class was for TBL, because they kind of got really engaged, that competitive streak started twitching in them, they really wanted to get ready for class and they wanted to contribute to their team.
If it was just lectures, I'd probably skip them. But being it's so hands-on and, if you miss it, you can't go back and redo it.
Very important. If you miss it, you missed the sessions because it builds. You cannot be able to catch up. And they know that from the beginning. They are risking the whole session by not coming to class. So they take huge risks.
It's been a relief to be able to focus just on the interactive seminar activities.
There's a sense of gamification that you can produce in TBL, and having people working in teams, giving the teams a fun name and creating a gentle spirit of competition is also quite useful. Sometimes it can be difficult to get students to volunteer their thoughts, whereas in TBL, that really structured approach meant that students knew what was expected and they came prepared for it, and it was not difficult to get students to speak up.
It pays to also go around.
You got the point, yeah.
So that
I'm not going to keep
everybody
playing it, but that's how actually it works. I'm going over here. Yes, question? There is a video also in the slides from the University of Texas. The University of Texas is a long video. I'm not going to play it, but please do. They have law as a very big case. They have history. They have languages. So they show you slightly more complicated TBL activities, how they work, using books, like carrying trolleys with books in the class. Like a different way of thinking. Sorry.
No problem. I was just looking at this and I think it's brilliant, but I have a challenge.
Go on.
We are aligned, meaning that whatever one campus uses, in our instance, whatever one campus uses, the other must also.
Yes.
So that the students have the same learning experience.
Yes.
I unfortunately do not sit with colleagues who might buy into this so easily.
Yes.
My question is how do I overcome that challenge? Because I'm willing to do it here, but I know that when we get the visit shortly, they're going to say, but the students on the one campus have a certain learning experience and the students on the other don't.
They don't have,
Because
yes.
we also have challenges, like we can't live stream all the time. So I'm not sure, maybe this is for something later, but I know those of us that are going through this alignment process,
Yes.
that is a challenge.
Yes. There's no easy answer. My feeling is that if you commit yourself to a methodology like TBL or PBL and so on, you commit it across the curriculum. So you do it across. Having said that, does not mean, but that will be a bit more threatening maybe for the other campuses, that you could actually have, so just to say it, if our colleagues now in the two campuses that they're watching, they were watching them in a class very similar to us, and there was there just one facilitator, not a TBL expert, I could run identical what I do with you here, with application sessions and clarifications, as long as someone there to keep the time and do. So you could actually broadcast a TBL to the other two campuses, as long as there is a physical presence of the students and someone there to maintain the rhythm of the TBL. Where we found problems is when you have to replace totally the TBL in a fully online version, not in another physical venue. So I'm very confident to run TBL with you guys online, and I'm going to try to do it, but it will make my life easier if there was a facilitator on both rooms, that they will distribute also the information, and I make sure that everybody is following. So I will pause and test and say, we've done our, actually it would be beautiful to say, Team B here says A, can I connect now with the campus over there? What was your scores? And you can make a very good event. That would be my answer, that actually you could volunteer for a start to say, it might be, you are trained now, or you will be hopefully after we finish. I would like to pilot it with the other two campuses and see how it's going to work. And you don't even need to have. The threatening aspect of it will be that the equivalent lecturer on the other side, they will feel, as our colleague says, you'll feel awkward being there and not doing your job, which is teaching. But the methodology is that you should not, yourself also you should not be teaching. You should be there facilitating. Talking about this, I'll show you what type of training we run. Sorry, there's a question?
There's just looking through the online questions,
Yes.
and Rianda Stein said that she's tried the flipped classroom
Yes.
last semester, and the feedback from the student was not positive at all. The feeling was that they pay for an expert to give the class.
Yes.
Okay, so that obviously
fair
you
enough.
get.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then she also asked, why should they teach each other? Why should students teach each other?
Why they should, yeah.
Yeah. So, and how can we change that thinking and feeling? Okay.
The straight answer for that is that I take the point, trust me, as the complete methodology works, not parts of it. The gamification, the formation of the teams, the aspects that we give them to work together, and the empowerment is what makes it work. Otherwise, if you do just random things of the TBL, it's not going to work. So it is the complete package that drives the students. It has to do with their motivation, what we know about student motivation, that actually they are driven by this kind of events. The answer to the expert actually is straightforward. The expertise is given in the quality of the resources and the quality of the videos and the readings. that you will give in the preparation stage, so they feel they are engaged, and that's something you have to work. You cannot really send them there and do 20 readings in preparation of TBL. They have to be readings, and they have to be some sort of input from you in a video, some sort of note, the slides, so they almost get the lecture prior to the TBL, and then they come there, and then they actually see that they use you as a resource.
I think that's a very important point that you make, Prof. Panos, because I've seen a lot of activities and that we say, read this before you come to class and do the quiz.
Yes.
Okay, so it's nothing wrong with that, but if you go and look at the reading, it is a 10-page reading or an 8-page reading for a first or a second year student with all these new concepts.
Yes.
So it is then you should involve the support or give support in that activity, because you should see that as a teaching and learning activity that students are doing, and they need some kind of a support, like for instance a guided reading. So give them guidance with the reading. Don't just say read and do the quiz and read and the same thing every time.
Absolutely.
Like you said, give a video maybe and with a reflection or something. Every time it should be different. And what I really like about this approach also is that students don't have to do the pre-work together.
Yes.
So because that's a challenge for our students, as you mentioned, that they can't come together in groups. There's always issues, this one has class and that one, to find time. I really like that.
In TBL, the teamwork is in the class. Controlled, very particular, timed with very particular parameters. And the preparation that you've done. Now, we've done, and I'll talk to it after the break about the research, we found strong correlations between the TRATs, the team ones, and the final marks of all the students, not so much on the IRATs. So it's actually very interesting that a lot of the students actually they move along with the right questions. And then if you correlate this with the actual reports that they put at the end, you can also see that. So a lot of the students that normally they don't perform well, as they develop, they come along and they develop their understanding. And the more advanced students, well, in a way, if you want, they love the opportunity, or they welcome the opportunity to clarify, to convince. They get, they get some sort of pride of talking to the other and being able to convince them. But from the interviews we've done with them, they're also sometimes shocked, for example, that other people, they don't get their points, that it's so difficult to influence someone to change a mind. And these are all of the skill sets that you are learning with the TBL, the professional skills. There was a comment or a question?
Thank you. If I can just step on to what Michelle has said. Some of the challenges that, because I've been working primarily with her, some of the challenges is also the willingness of the lecturer on the other side of delivery. The willingness to explore various teaching and learning strategies, like incorporating the TBL, and also the resistance to change. They set in ways by having a problem for every solution. So, that's some of the challenges besides the connectivity and all of that.
That's why I opened this session today by talking about signature pedagogies. Given the amount of time that you will need to put into designing questions, because that's the alpha and omega in TBL, your questions in the IRAT and TRAT, if they are quizzes that almost anyone could answer after they spend 1 hour reading with no gray areas and so, don't do TBL. Just go and do quiz of a reading. They have to be the question that takes them to the meta level. And you will put time, and I'll show you the thing from the literature, how much time you will need to prepare. So if you're going to do it, you have to be reassured by your managers, your deans, that this is a methodology we endorse. One way to do it is to call for a trial or a pilot period on an agreed time and give it a go, but not commit themselves. Our medical people, they committed themselves. Our modern history people, they committed themselves. Languages, they come in and out, depending how they feel in the class they want to do. But we are moving towards establishing it as, we hope that we can establish it as a methodology for replacing our lectures and improving our tutorials. So there is, going back to discussions about strategic direction and so on, If collaboration is in the aspect of the university's vision, that's a way to do it. And comes down to you. I mean, most of the high-end managers and executive directors, they will be very happy to see the lecturers doing all these beautiful things. But it's how you convince yourselves. Go on.
Yes, maybe just to add to what Monique said, I think one way of dealing with the problem that, or get lecturers from different campuses involved in this strategy, if it's decided that that's the methodology to go, I think it's very good if the lecturers can come together and they each can get a unit on which they can work on a very good PBL, TBL activity and how they will deal with that study unit, and then stream it to the other two campuses. And in that way, we deal with the problem, like they say, here at Potch we do things different and there they do things different, because then each lecturer gets an opportunity to showcase this type of methodology. It's streamed to the other campuses and
work with that.
Vice versa.
There's one comment from our law college.
Have you done research to see how this increased class attendance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And also how much or not increased students' academic performance compared with others. Because the tricky there is not that they're going to become better learners in the academic aspect. They become better in the communication and the skills. Like the good students. So anyway, I'm going to talk to this in the other part because it's a research we're about to publish. I'm going to share with you. Just to go a bit about, just 5 minutes I will break on the training aspect, just to show you how we do the training with our academics. So these academics themselves, when they go to a TBL training session, they actually participate in a TBL session. Traditionally, and I could have done this with you, I would have asked you to read all of these things. And I could have started the class with a test where all your questions, how many times, what is the formation, they should have been answered. But I thought, okay, it's a bit too much at this stage for you to do. But the way we run it is, you model it. If you register for TBL training, we are going to come and do a 2 hours TBL training by doing TBL. So just a quick example of what do I mean here. And then we break for 10-15 minutes. Are you okay so far? Enjoying it, following it? Yeah? Okay. Oh no, it's not over here. I have to go back to... Okay. So this is a typical training session of Macquarie that we put for our TBL. This is around 105 academics across the university. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for a session on team-based learning. So they get a bit of an I'm going to take it directly to see the biggest art. To the learner, the material before you arrive. Once they arrive, immediately say test. I'm just playing it to the point where you see them. To you to be prepared in the answer explanation. You've already tested and can take part to an application. So this is what we call become a TBL now for an hour. Sessions yourselves being students.
Okay guys, so what we're about to undertake is the IRAT. So it's an individual readiness assurance test, meaning you need to take this by yourself.
You don't need all these fancy screens, by the way.
IRAT.
Don't be, but we try to showcase our best as we do. Actually, they don't even use the screens around them. Now, they take the test, and the test was difficult. They had to go, the people that didn't read the guide, they wanted to go and ask questions, where is the answer? And seeing now senior academics and professors, you know, like thinking, oh my God, it's an open book, always an open book, yeah? They can bring things.
I'll be taking you through the dashboard and what this particular set of software provides us.
This is what I've seen. All the reds are the wrong answers. You can see how many they had, yeah? This were our academics prepared, 100 academics in the teams.
The average time taken. If you run it week to week,
Yeah.
you get a study.
So because they didn't prepare, they didn't come to the class prepared. But they get it as a student point of view. What does it mean? Then we'll go to the point. So, my advice will be, if you think a number of you are going to run it, talk to the team, the learning and teaching team, that they will support you anyway. And you can run an event, actually maybe a three-way event with your other campuses, to do just 1 hour TBL, which is going to be read the guides, take participation, do that, and the application activity could be, if we were to design it for our units, our modules, how that will look like. And you spend 1 hour trying to come to an agreement. So the methodology drives a bit collaboration, as opposed to saying no from the beginning. That's kind of different clever ways of going about it. So what we'll do now is we're going to break for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have some coffee, because some people, they want coffee. Your online people, find your coffee, your water, your toilets. We cannot provide them. When we come back, we're going to actually try TBL as much as I can with the technology I have and the online people, okay? And then we're going to continue with a clarification session, and then we're going to see the research evidence, okay? That's how we're going to progress. Thank you. Testing? Yep. You're okay. Are we all back? You don't have a team there. Maybe we'll just give them 1 more minute, just for everybody to be back. There's a queue always, isn't it? It's important, yes. We should have done the different formulation of teams. Yeah. As we wait, are there any burning questions or clarifications? Yes.
Prof, I was just wondering with regard to dividing the students in teams.
Yes.
If they have 4 or 5 modules, the groups in which they belong, is it similar across all the modules or is different groups per module?
If in the unlikely event, as they say in the airways, that everybody wants to do TBL, all 4 modules want to do TBL, it will be exhausting. So keep in mind that TBL is not a panacea. It's not everybody should be doing TBL. TBL should be there for the units or the modules in which they will benefit the most. But if that happens, I will say they can have the team in each of the modules because it's an independent, so they can have different teams in the different modules in that case. So across our, for example, across the Doctor of Medicine program, which comprises year-long, not semester, but year-long modules, we had a big debate whether it's going to be into the biomedical science unit or module or whether it's going to be in the clinical. And we realized actually that the advanced level that we need in the clinical, which is pretty much case-based, is the one to go. The point of doing a very much factual unit, which was read and on TBL was nothing there because the quizzes, they would be very, very, very low. Still, they do other type of collaboration, don't get me wrong. They might do group work, group discussions, these kind of things. But the TBL, we keep it for the ones that they need this time to think, they need to prepare. Sometimes it's as pragmatic as I have issues with attendance and I cannot not have my students there. For example, in our case, big history is one of the biggest modules in the university, taken by more than 300 or 400 students from across all of the university. So you get engineers, doctors, anyone, because it's what we call a generic course. Traditionally, it had failing rates of 50% and attendance rates of 20%. After TBL, we went up to high distinctions and to 95% attendance. Tremendous, extreme differences. And they are in my faculty. So when the results came, and I say, oh, 87 distinctions, how they happen? Well, it happened through reading. The difference was that previously it was a course, it was easy enough because it was generic, but full of facts, and the students, they didn't pay attention, and they failed a very easy subject. I'm going to show you the example. So there is no rule to say you have to have. Now, if you are the unit or the module coordinator for all of this, and for your own sake of keeping your records and your, like having, you may wish to keep the same teams. But at least in our university, it's unlikely that the students, they will take all of the units or the modules at once at the same sequence. They will have 1 or 2 core, and then they will have options. And in the options, they will go out and take different ones. Is that right? Yeah. Was any other question? Yeah. Right.
Just a clarification. What I was thinking now in tea time is that if you're using the team-based learning methodology, you should really try to use the whole thing as a methodology.
Yes.
If you are adapting it and you're adding, say for instance, group work before the time that they have to, or team work with it before the class that they have to do, then you're actually not doing team-based learning, you're just doing an aspect of that. Because I'm not saying you shouldn't adapt it, but if you don't do it, it may fail, or if research says it works and you're doing something different, start thinking about that as a new methodology, which can be wonderful. But I'm just making that note.
And that's the point about where the teamwork is introduced. That's one of the big differences in the TBL. The teamwork is part of the session. You can add a more demanding pre-reading thing. You might want them to have, for example, preparation quizzes before they come to do their IRAT. Hopefully there's not just an identical thing that then you repeat, but you can give them the little conceptual ones as part of your quiz that you do anyway to test that they understand the readings. And then in the IRAT, they are a bit to the next level. So I would not negotiate the IRAT and the TRAT in a TBL. I would negotiate the version of application. Then it could be case-based, PBL, even just, it could be a presentation, just name it. The clarification, again, you could negotiate with yourself and the students if it's going to be student-driven, or you will be doing the clarification. Or you will invite an expert to do the clarification, like an external. Or you will connect with another campus to do the clarification. But the events, they do happen. Appeals, which was the middle one, it was the most one that the literature was not consistent. Not everybody does the appeal thing, which is students arguing and correcting, depending on the complexity of the questions and how, difficult they are to phrase and so on.
And then from an online comment, they just ask if you can just expand a bit on that first bullet. So
over here.
You're probably going through it, but they just say they want to know more about that.
Okay, so that's collectively from the literature. And by the way, can I just borrow this for a sec? The introduction to TBL on the back, it has a number of good publications, good readings. There's a lot of them, but there are a few that I highly recommend, which is, let me see. Yes, from Michelson. We actually are the inventors of the TBL. So the ones that they are from Michelson and Watson from 1989, but then read it with the 2008, because we have there a 20 years change of thinking a bit and improvement by the creators of the TBL. So these are the Michelson two publications are good. This is from the introduction to TBL guides. Yeah. Over there, those two, if you want to read two, read them and see also the difference in the way that they present the TBL. Okay. So based on this review, which we had the need to conduct to convince the university to give us the time that we needed to do all these beautiful things, but also do our research. These are some of the advantages. So one of the very first reported ones is that the increased engagement of faculty in facilitating learning. This came about especially in areas where a lot of interdisciplinary input is needed. So health is one of the biggest ones, where most of the times when you do a case-based or a problem-based, you will need the input from a number of experts within the health. So you will need potentially a clinician, you might need a senior nurse, you might need a physiotherapist, you might need a pharmacist, a biomedical person, and so on. They found out that through the TBL, coming together to write the questions for the TBL increased this kind of faculty engagement. So they use the event of writing. The same with the colleagues in law, that they will talk to colleagues in sociology, and they might talk with colleagues in politics, and they will come and write more diverse questions. Our indigenous department, as you hear, they found this as a liberating methodology, because actually they said, now they are inviting us to give our input because they want to have a question about it, and they want to do it. So that's where it comes from. That brings people out of their own individual. Most of the times, to be honest, if you do TBL, you will sit down to come with interesting questions, and you will say, is it good enough? Is it complex? Oh, I can add another dimension. And you will start knocking the doors of your colleagues to help you write good questions. And that's where this statement comes. I don't know if that answers the question of our colleagues. The second, which is perhaps one of the biggest wins in the TBL, is the increased in-classroom engagement of students. All the publications I've witnessed, they said, if anything, you'll get the students to come in. And I've seen that now in 5 instances on Macquarie, from, as I said, 50% non-attendance to 95% attendance, to different variations. In health, but then health always has the thing, they are perhaps better students anyway coming in, they are more motivated, But we tried with totally generic modules, and we found exactly the same results. So keeping this in mind with the other piece of research I just completed that shows 60-70% decrease in engagement and participation from week 2, TBL, actually we're trying to sell it as, if anything, a solution to the thing, if we believe that classroom engagement is important. If we believe it's not, maybe there are other methodologies, which is, just do fully online quizzes and engagement. But if you want to see people in the class, you need to do something more than lecturing. And this is one of the many things that they can keep people in the class. The transition from passive to active learners almost goes without saying it. If you ask students to take quizzes, to bring resources, to search, to talk, becomes passive to active. How active is down to you to observe. But at minimum, they will talk to each other, and at minimum, they will read, and they will do some preparation. Students stay on track. That's an important benefit because, and that's down to you. You have to stay on track for the students to stay on track. Yeah. So you put a sequence of 10. By the way, you don't need to have 10 TBLs. You may want to have 4 TBLs in 4 particular weeks of difficult concepts, which is an introduction always so they can experience, and then 2 or 3 weeks it might be the usual lecturing and so on, but week 4, that is before the big case study that has to be created, you call it TBL session. So you can play. 12 weeks keeps the sequence, is happening and so on. But if everybody does it, it's losing any kind of novelty. It becomes another lecture, or not again TBL. Don't tell me again this. It becomes problematic. So we keep an eye on that. We negotiate it. So TBL should be there when it's appropriate to be. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to do TBL. You will find out it's also for you. You don't have enough to do a TBL if your units and your modules are not rich enough. And satisfaction with peer evaluation is quite positive. I mean, we've done that as part of our research to find out if students, they shift their perception of teamwork. And we've seen people before TBL claiming they prefer to work alone because they believe they are good students, to say they now prefer to teach other students as part of the methodology because they show how much they enjoy talking about how much they learn. Which is good. It's not negative. Satisfaction.
Can I quickly ask?
Of course.
To what extent is the TBL emotionally draining on the students? Because I can think from our students that it will take a lot of emotions from them. It can become a tiring
it could be
exercise if you do it continuously.
Yes. It could be a very tiring exercise if you're continuing in the same kind of fast pace, lots of readings, ideally the more advanced, the more you progress in the weeks, you should have more bigger but less information, like more complicated but less information. And we are always paying attention when it's peak time for exams and assessments.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, one of the big findings for us was the amount of time they take to study, which we didn't ask to. The materials are identical to what they had prior. They still had the readings, but now they're doing them. So it shows to us that we are planning for 3 and 4 hours of preparation. It's not that you have to do that. You might actually just recommend 1 hour of preparation. So you have to pay a lot of attention of what resources you put there and what you do with the TBL. The exhaustion for us came in one of the courses, but this was for the online learners. The distance learners, they hate it because the reason they did distance learning was because they wanted flexibility to work on their own time. And TBL forces them to come and do synchronized work with others. They opt out. They left. They just, without academic penalty, they left in 3 weeks. We lost something like 100 students from the open universities. We are looking now ways of doing it, and we realize we cannot really force it into students. Yeah, it's a very good observation. It will be tiring for you as well. Yeah, believe it. Which goes there. Issues. Planning and developing the TBL exercises is one of the biggest concerns that academics they have raised in the literature. A, how much? And B, to what level? And there is no right or wrong answer there, but the one answer I can give is that it should be almost like a progressively developed sequence. So you might actually have in the first couple of weeks more factual questions. It's not necessarily the end of the world. And I'm going to show you an example of asking things that you can Google and within 1 second you can get it. And given that the students, they are allowed to use everything, they might get them. All the way though to slightly more complicated. We recommend in our university having a database, a bank of questions, interdisciplinary questions as well, that then we can also share and reuse. So hopefully as we develop them, they are staying into our online system and people, they can reuse questions. But don't underestimate. The idea of not execution, which came from this paper from Zingon in 2010, is more about the fact that everything goes according to plan, but then something happens in the university or something happens in the life of the lecturer, and because you have planned from TBL, you do not execute it well, and then drops. And the students, and they're kind of left with no other support. There's no backup. So my answer to that is the TBL is the difficult thing. You will put time. If you cannot do it, you can revert back to what you do by using the TBL information. So if the not execution is become a problem, for example, you plan for technology and then failed, or you plan for 100 students and you ended up with 300 students that particular year, and you decide not to do it, you can revert back. But to move a month before the commencement of your classes to a TBL, or to do it week by week, that a lot of us, to be honest, we are planning our weeks like that, it will frustrate you. You know, like if you have to wake up on Monday morning and think of your IRAT for tomorrow, it's not going to be an IRAT. You have to think. So lock your time. Ideally, do a session collectively together with the people in the other campuses and say, if we were to do it, let's try it in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks. But I want this kind of input. Let's come together and write. If you sorted out your quizzes, IRATs and TRATs, and some more sophisticated application activities, you are done. The rest, clarifications and all the others, they're actually part of the game. They're going to come together. Application in extended scales, all faculty curricula, and this comes almost to the discussion we had there. It can become tiring, and also it can become a thing that the students, they will say, you know, there must be other ways of learning. It does not always fit the student. Yeah, we do it so we can teach them also a skill. But if you do it only that way, you disadvantage students that they don't want to do TBL. They learn better if they learn in a different way. So always keep in mind diversity of learning and teaching should be in the curriculum. Yeah? So I think in my case, I was in education, in the School of Education in 2013, 2014. I had 4 equivalent modules. Only one had a TBL, and that was the leadership one that has the most complicated scenarios for the students. The introduction to educational theory, it was a simple, you know, like a very everyday course. Things like that. So, workload and resources is the other kind of concern. So here we have a School of Pharmacy. Student participation comes with an increase in faculty, which is workload. Yes. Preparation time and even trying to organize and facilitate, if you're going to opt for this one, even photocopying and creating things, it will become part of you. I don't know in your university, but in mine, the idea of having a good secretary or administrator is far, it's something from the past. So when you want to do your photocopying, you are queuing in the photocopying. And if it is 800 times 5, you are waiting. So put them all in the parameters of this. Adequate time and resource for implementation, successful implementation. So this was more of a correlation analysis between how much time and how successful it was. And they found that obviously the more time you put and you organize yourself, the better success. But I think that goes, you know, it is a fact in life. The more prepared you are, the more chance you have for success. But they also said that, and that's the 2013, the TBL curriculum did not differ to any other preparation, assuming you are preparing for the other things. Yeah, so we exclude the fact that we are preparing as we go, but if you truly prepare your 13 weeks of teaching ahead with your readings and your papers and your slides and everything, they estimate it is very much the same. So I'm trying to make the argument, we expect students to prepare and study and be prepared. That also reflects you. And sometimes might not be the time for you. If you are in a work, is it 40-40-20 workload you have, roughly? Or 60-40? If you are in an intensive research part of your life, maybe it's not wise to also take on a TBL thing. But if you are in the time of inspiration and you want to give it a go with your students, it's the time to do it. Now, I'm going to share here an example to show you how overwhelming it could be if we try to do TBL in the LMS, how it looks like in the eye of the student. Let's see if I can do that. Let me do this and duplicate. So, that's our LMS. So our LMS is Moodle. Not that this makes a lot of difference. All the LMSs, they have the same kind of functionalities. That's an introductory unit. The 100 level are an introductory unit. Year one, that's one. Year 1, Session 1, 2018. So freshers arriving at the university from all over the university. They have an option to take an elective, and they choose a lot of them the big history because it's all these Big Bang theories, and it brings philosophy and medicine and archaeology all in one thing. And they do it. And we have a very good, very innovative professor over there who is looking after it. Yeah? Traditionally, the way that he will develop this unit will be the introduction, and then a weekly video, a quiz, and a couple of readings. So like 12 little things, very neat, almost like one scroll down. After the introduction of TBL, it looked a bit like that. Team-based learning, information about them, the groupings, and then he had to do 5 repeats of TBL workshops in a week because of the amount of students he ended up having. So he ended up having IRETs, which are okay, and these are in the online space, and he was using just the quiz tool of the LMS. And then the TRATs, also in the LMS in the class, but he had to do the repeats because of the fact that he didn't have enough physical space. So he decided that also he's going to open up to the online people so they don't have to come in. So, and then the big mess started happening. Students having to do all the IRAs, you can see it there a bit, I hope. Then they had to do their TRATs on a Wednesday at 10 a.m., at 1 p.m., at 4 p.m., at 2 p.m. Yeah, like different schedules, the different weeks. Then the application activities that they were around online discussions, and then a wiki activity where they have to co-author an answer to the thing. So I think it was something like 20 pages scroll just to go through the TBL thing. And it became messy in the fact that the students, they couldn't really navigate themselves. The group wikis, they were okay, but not all of the students, they will bother to go and do the applications and so on. So now he's moving away from this thing, and what he's going to do for next year, he's going to bring 3 diverse groups of students together, the face-to-face, the external Macquarie, and the distance into the Open University Australia. And all of them, they will be getting the IRAT just in one folder, very thing, not in this kind of weekly thing. This is your IRAT and the schedule, almost like in a timetable. Then they will be having the TRAT, the face-to-face, they're going to do it in the class. The onlines, they're going to do it using the quiz. And then we just introduced a tool called VoiceThread, which is almost a discussion forum, but creates mini video clips. So instead of having to type the clarifications and the discussion, they will just need to click the button, and I think they have a 2-minute maximum limit. Within 2 minutes, they have to explain to each other why they should be voting, and then they will be voting for the team activity. So instead of having to do, I don't know, 60 messages that they argue and they write, there will be very quick little vignettes of online videos, which I thought that we hope it's going to work really well. So trying to make more kind of face-to-face and humane approach to the interaction for the TBL to work. In terms of a good example, in terms of how it looks in the online, okay, let me see, where are they? So here is our professional development team in the clinical science. Team-based learning activities, that's a layout that I like. Before class, during class, preparations, and all the different TBL activities that they have to do there. And then once they've done it, he used this kind of gamification, the 6 teams, the different names, okay? The daily prophets, the team who must not be named, whatever they call it, and who every week is the first, second, and third in the ranking. So he introduced it almost like as a game. And he says, every week you're going to be this and this, and then I'm going to reveal the results, and you will see your table, and they continue, and then at the end of the day, they gave them a number of badges for first, second, third place. Very clear design for a TBL, because it had this kind of element, which was before, after, and during. Yeah, and keep going like that in the weeks. Before class, all the things you have to be prepared to come to do the IRAT, very clear. What is expected to happen in the TBL, this kind of questions, so study more and more about genetics, solutions, whatever they are. Then during the class, the platform that they will take to take the TBL, and then the results of the team. So the team that it was last in the previous week is now first this week. The team that was, if I'm right, I think it was the team was third. The following week it became first. So it became a big competition. Obviously that team felt, we're actually good students. Let's push ourselves. And they really, really enjoy it. And he continues with that pattern and works really, really well. Which also works well for his students that they are not able to come physically face-to-face, but he doesn't have the huge amounts. Okay? So we are still looking how we can support the fully distance learners in a TBL. And this VoiceThread tool, which is kind of a video, it's potentially one of the answers we are looking. But I will be able to update you on that. Any questions so far? Okay? All right. So, what I would like to do now, all of you, including our people online, go to thesocrative.com. So you're going to get a little IRAT yourselves, just to see what you learned from the preparation. That was this an hour and a half. It was the preparation with questions and answers. So now I'm going to say, imagine yourselves coming to the class, and the very first thing you're going to do is take an IRAT, just to see whether you know enough to start the class. So socrative.com. Do you have a device, even a mobile? Okay, it's not working? All right. All of you? We can do it the old-fashioned way by showing hands, which is fine. I can just play the quiz and I can see your answers, but that's fine. That's the backup. Or another backup I could have done was to have prepared this quiz also as a printout for everybody. But you get the idea. Normally, and now you get also the complexities of doing it with the technology or not, if you don't have, for example, a reliable internet across the campuses, just in case. All right, so don't worry. Let's go with the traditional way. So the same with our online colleagues, maybe as I reveal the questions there, they can just type the answers that they believe are correct. But, okay, I have an idea. Given that this is an IRAT, it's not a TRAT, so it is an individual, you'll just write your answers A, B, C, D in this individual paper. And you keep it for yourselves. Okay? Can I pass a few? You can just pass over there. Pass a few. Can you pass just one sticky paper for everybody? And one sticky paper for everybody. Guys, you're going to participate? For that. If you are online, it's MQ 2019, if you're going to do it in the online space, if you are connected. Otherwise, you just use this, and you just have question 1 and A, B, C, D, or whatever it is. Very kind of fashion. Okay? Online, Socrative, MQ 2019. And see if we're going to go to have an IRAT. Loans, quiz, TBL IRAT. Next, teacher pays, and start. So, question 1. Based on what you heard or you read in your preparation, for a TBL team to be successful, what is the ideal number? So you can vote or put A and then, sorry, question 1 and then A, B, C, D, or E. 5 to 7, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 10 to 15. Okay? You can, don't show it to me at this stage. We're going to do that as a team. Keep it for yourselves. So in the IRAT, the students, they do it themselves and they don't know the answer. So I'm not going to reveal the answer.
Just a clarification on the online, something on students, can the online IRAT do it online, can it be open?
Yes, yes. So that's why don't ask the question, what is TBL? Team-based learning, problem-based learning, unless there is, you want to work them up and, do something. Just not to be threatening. Still, there is a time. TBL, IRAT, and TRAT is timed, always. If you do it online, the quiz has a timer and shuts down after 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and normally you allow 1 or 2 attempts. In case the one attempt crashes the computer or something, they can come back. Yeah, but it is timed, which means if the question is complicated enough, so one of the questions, for example, I might ask my students will be, which new publication in that area claims that, there's no time to read the publication. Either they read it and they can see the claim. It might be something very obvious, but they have to tell me it's publication 1. If they haven't done it, looking to now read out of the 5 readings to confirm the statement is not going to work. Okay? So, next. Which of the following is strongly discouraged when forming teams for TBL? A, equally allocating students to teams based on gender, ethnicity, and prior learning. B, making the selection process transparent. C, randomizing team formation. D, allowing students to form their own team. Only one of them is strongly forbidden, and the others are more advisable than. So again, it's a type of question that there is not one single best, but there is one definitely single wrong for that. So as you see, I don't reveal the scores, but I have on the background the person who voted. No, I can also ask their names if I want to, and I can actually get the information. Okay, next one. During which step of TBL would immediate feedback be appropriate? During the IRAT, during the TRAT, during the preparation, or during the focused application tasks, the application tasks? Now we're getting slightly more complicated in our questions. So where would you recommend that immediate feedback must be given? Well, I mentioned where feedback should not be given. I just told you. So you can have an appeal in a bit. Yeah, you can actually say this was not substantially covered in the resources, or it was in the reading that it was not emphasized, and you can argue with me that I didn't teach you that. Okay? All of them, yeah, it should be all of them, yes. Okay. Application activities should be characterized by the 4 C's. And these are a substantial problem, a significant choice, a same problem, and report. A significant problem, but same problem, specific choice, and report. Significant problem, systematic, specific choice, and report. You can open the book. It's one of the very obvious guides where they talk about the 4 C's of TBL. So you don't know about it because I didn't teach it, but it is in your handouts. So, yes, substantial problem, significant choice, same problem, simultaneous report, 4 C's. Significant problem, same problem, specific choice, simultaneous report. Significant problem, systematic problem, specific choice, simultaneous report. Now, if you want some support, maybe there is a page that says about the 4 C's that you could look if you have time. Okay? So you see here, we didn't, it's a sequence of only a small change. So even if they read it and they didn't understand it, they are likely to make a mistake because it's not totally unique sets of answers. Yeah, the difference will be perhaps in one of the C's and so on. But that will be enough time that I will give you, so that will be what you will have in a TBL. I'm moving to the next question. There is no team collaboration. The most valuable learning occurs in a TBL. So, and this is not in the books, not in the teaching, is your perceptions. Yeah? So that will be something that will be negotiable. So learning takes place mostly during the preparation, during the teams that they've been formed, across the teams, so when the teams, they clarify each other, the intra, or during just the clarification session. So where do you think in the TBL the most valuable learning takes place? A, in the preparation, B, within the teams, individual teams discussion, across the teams discussion, when they open it up to the class, or during the clarification session where the lecturer steps in and clarifies. Or all of the above. or none of the above. Now, over here, there will be something in the reading, and there is something in the reading that says the sequence in which learning takes. And it's down to you now as a team, and that we'll see how important is it in TRAT, to agree. Because the area will say that at least 2 of those are recommended, this is where the learning takes. But you need to agree, and then you may want to appeal, and you want me to clarify, and we open up the theory of intra-learning comes as inter-learning, and becomes, so we move, you know, from factual information to more conceptual information. Our online people, they are also typing. Do we get answers? Yeah, good. TBL online cannot work. That's a statement. It might be somewhere in your readings. It might be based on what we discussed today. It's a question that's more of a value question for you. But it will provide a good discussion opportunity when you, especially if you disagree in your teams, whether it works or not. It's almost like asking you, imposing a regulation on team-based learning in this university will never be accepted because of the history. You know, some of you might say yes, because I've seen that happening. Some of you might be more optimistic, like more value question. Okay? TBL actually is in accordance, agrees with your university's learning and teaching strategy. Do you strongly agree? You have no idea what TBL or the strategy is, or actually you totally disagree. That could be a point where you can appeal me. A, we don't call it strategy, for example, or it's not the learning and teaching strategy, but you can have a debate with me when I open the opportunity. Another value question. I think I know enough about TBL to give it a go. I totally agree to strongly disagree. You will debate it later with your teams. Okay, so finish. Normally there will be a little timer that will say did, and they will stop the quiz. It's timed, so if you haven't completed everything, you haven't completed everything. It is what it is. You will be tempted, if you use the technology, to view the report so you can see how you go. You don't do it in the IRAT. So now what I'm going to tell you is we'll go back to the quiz. I'm going to start it again, but this time you need to agree, and only one of you. So now let's take a team per row. So you are a team, 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 and you are a team. And you, first of all, the first thing you need to know is who is going to be writing the answer on behalf of you. So nominate one who's going to just click the button, or in your case, just write the answer. And you have to negotiate. Okay? So take 30 seconds, find the person who reports. Now, in the online space, because are they physically somewhere together? No, they will not be. So in your case, treat this again as an opportunity. Now, maybe you can use the chat if you want to spend some time. So try to convince why. You can type a couple of things. Treat all of you as one team. But use the chat as a way to collaborate and try to convince. But if I had the fully online version, I could actually ask you to do it. Okay? So, I'm going to relaunch the quiz. This time the quiz is identical. A single change is not allowed, but is a new instance it's a replica in the online system carries the questions, but you need to know that's IRAT results and TRAT results. That's why you don't launch the same quiz. It's the same, but in a different, it's a copy of the same quiz. Okay, I didn't ask you to give me a name for your team, but that's all right. So, question 1, feel free to talk to each other if you reveal to your colleagues what you voted for. So, next question. Which of the following is strongly discouraged when forming a TBL? Spend some time, reveal the answers to your colleagues. Okay. Now, within your teams, discuss which of the 4 answers there is the correct one. So which step would need to have feedback. Reveal your answers and discuss. Okay. Next question, applications the 4 C's. Which are the 4 C's? Now, by now you should have found the page. It should be an easy one. All right, next one. The most valuable the most valuable learning for our students occurs during which part of the TBL? The study, the inter-team discussions, the intra-team discussions, or the clarification sessions? So inter is when you do it here. Intra is when we open up with all the teams. Inter, yes. Yeah. So that's. The across. That could be a point for appeal. Maybe, I'm saying. Because maybe the lecturer is not really confused and could be confused. Google it and then you're happy to report it, yeah? Because the lecturer might be confused. So international across nationals, inter-faculty across faculties, introvert, into. So maybe the lecturer was very, very confused when he was writing that. Some people, they throw very obvious mistakes just to see whether the students, they will pick up obvious mistakes. It's no mistake in the quiz, it's a mistake in the way it was taught. Okay, so use that and say, when I ask for appeals, you can actually say, wait a minute, you taught us this. That's how, so we see what the other people say. Okay, next one. TBL online cannot work. So inter was B and intra was C, if you want to vote for that, yeah. So TBL online cannot work. Okay? TBL follows or agrees with your university approach to learning and teaching. The direction. If you believe you cannot answer the question, write it as an appeal to me later on. And time for the final question, which is again a values question. As a team, do you feel that you know enough to actually try it out? So that will be an interesting negotiation. Someone said how much is enough. That's a point for an appeal. The definition of enough is vague for us to vote. You might well say, I know theory, I know the practice. You may want to clarify that. Okay, that's fine enough. Okay, can I bring everybody back, assuming this is the bell ringing that you voted, the same with our online. Now, in a typical TBL, what would be the case if we are using technology? By now, everybody they will have seen the chart, so they will know the team one, because you had to put team name. They got 3 out of 6, and so on. So you know roughly where is your red and your green areas. If we were doing it in this kind of way, you would be holding as a team a card, because I will ask you to reveal your answer, and then we'll be getting the immediate feedback. So here's one answer, that the TBL immediate feedback is in the TRAT process, so you can have the clarification. But the way we're going to go about it, and that's a variation of it, will be to go now question by question and see what the teams have voted. So I know what I have because I have the dashboard there, but I play a bit of devil's advocate because there might be. So the very first thing I ask is, are there any appeals? Yes. All right. So if I had a whiteboard, which I recommend, I would write the appeals there so I know what they are. I'm going to use my pen and paper and I'm going to see. and then I will ask whether you can talk to each other. So, anyone has an appeal first? Yes?
On question 5, we have an appeal.
Yes.
We have an appeal on question 5.
5, yes. Which is?
What is the question again?
So I'll go back to the question. So.
Okay, where the most valuable learning takes place.
Yes.
And the appeal we had was, I think, the option that wasn't there was we think that the most valuable learning takes place in the application phase.
Okay. So you have an appeal on the options.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, please. What is the nature of your appeal?
Even if you add the application option, significant learning takes place across all those because these phases scaffold.
Scaffold. Perfect. So we need all of the above as one. Anyone who is willing to defend the current set? Because they somewhere in the theory of TBL suggest that there is a distinct thing.
We are willing to go for the last option.
The application ones. Okay, thank you. Any other appeals? I would appeal the enough. What was there in there was a question about valuable. I would strongly appeal the word valuable. What is valuable learning? I would ask to define whether it is professional, like a learning skill, the theory, what is valuable, in what context do we talk about valuable. I would definitely write an appeal about that as a team, and I would say, to me, valuable is the fact that actually is the pre-class activity, is just the content. No, valuable to me is the communication and takes place in the applications. And I would say make it specific, not make it vague. Thank you. Other appeals?
We had an appeal on question 8, the last one.
The last one, which was about
about whether we're ready to implement TBL, and we felt the options were quite narrow because the options we would have preferred were not there. So maybe my colleagues can add on.
So you have something to add as an option, yeah?
For the last one, question 8.
Yes, maybe if there was something that can say there will be a follow-up or an extension or something that can build on the foundation that was laid.
Yes, okay. So perhaps...
So we are in between.
Yes.
We want to, but we are not yet, we are not so sure we are there yet.
Okay. So it will be not confident, yeah. So we could actually add something that, again, it was a question of enough that is appealable. What is enough? So it could be like, do you have enough introductory knowledge to take further training into TBL? It would be phrased different. I take the appeal. Thank you. That's fine. Any other? Yeah, the internet is a very good one.
It's clear.
But I taught it wrongly. Yes, but you can appeal to say that for the team. Okay, here we have an appeal. Purpose-built appeal.
I just want to say we asked some guidance from our facilitator about what is inter and what is intra, and then he guided us in the wrong direction.
Okay. So, can I ask the team, what was your understanding of inter teams within the group, and what was the understanding of intra? Okay. Do you want to? Okay. Yes. So intra is within the team. Inter is across the teams. But in my presentation of that, I spoke about the other way. So I apologize, I was confused. And if you have voted like that, we can now retake the quiz if it is very important to confirm. But I take the appeal that the resources were not clear enough on that space and they misguided you. So I can take the appeal. So that's how it works. We take the appeals And then we go question by question in order now to reveal, even with these appeals, if we can take. So, in the first one, what was your team's answer to this question? A. Any team that did not vote for A? Okay. Okay. So you wanted also a different answer, all right?
There we said 5 to 7, but then we said if you're 300 or more, you're not going to have 5 to 7 people in the team.
Yes,
Ideally,
you might have.
but depending on the
Okay.
size.
Perfect. So now we are in the clarification process. Yeah, we are using the TRAT. We got the appeals and we clarify. Thank you. Based on what is in your reading, so if this was a formal examination, you will need to put A. Yeah. But I take the point that perhaps we need to get a better understanding and add up an answer here that says depends on the size. Although the theory of formation of groups strongly suggests 5 to 7. Go on.
If one has a bigger class, what would be the practically recommended number per group?
I will be hesitant to go over 10 for the TBL. I've done it with 10. I've seen it with 10. It's getting problematic. It's not functioning having teams of 20 and 25, where in another situation will be the whole class. So, and that's the practicality. With 1,000, like with 300 students in the big history, they ended up with teams of 10, but 30 of those, and they had to break them down in different tutorials, like repeat the tutorials. So do the maths.
Just to clarify that as well, remember team-based is for when you're in a class, you engage as a team. So you never get 1,000 students at once in your class. Yes. So our lecture halls can take about 300, 400 students at a time. Yes. So
because
hopefully,
you'll have repeats.
Yeah, yes. You'll have repeats,
yes.
and etc. So you can still do it with that class. If there's 250 students in a class, the best way is still 5 to 7 groups.
If we have time at the very end.
So if you're thinking about your whole module and 1,000 students and the administration thereof, then you have to be more think differently about it. If there's administration afterwards for you, like in your.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's important. And the other thing that I want to say, about the clarification phase, which I really like. When I was a student, I really didn't understand theory. I had a very much difficulty. What is theory? How is it? This is a very good teaching moment to teach students why is theory debatable and etc. etc.
Absolutely.
To take that teaching moments as well to teach students about things in the discipline.
But can I take the room to agree that within the parameters of perhaps interpreting the theory slightly different, if we follow what we know for TBL, answer A is the correct answer for us for today. Okay. And can I ask the last team over there to give me the answer? Why? To assume that I have my dashboard here and I know that you gave a wrong or a not wrong answer, I could play with that. I can start by choosing one that is wrong and ask them to clarify why, but at this stage I'll just play it by thing. So can you tell us what did you go for? So which is strongly disencouraged when it comes to team formation?
We decided to go with option D.
Option D. And what was the reason for that?
Because if you take a practical example now, we are all friends here at the beginning of the semester, we are in the same group, but you get a weaker link in the team, it's someone that's not doing anything in the team, and later on you might not be friends anymore, and it will be a problem in you maybe progressing during the semester in the module.
Lovely, thank you. Any other team though that has a different opinion? Anyone who voted for any other of the three options? We have a comment, an appeal or a comment?
Addition.
An addition. Let's listen.
as to why the answer.
Yes.
It also, if you allow students to choose their own teams,
yes,
it diverts from you having a diverse team,
yes,
or group. So
which is the foundational rule of TBL. Okay, so link it back to the theory. It's all of these things, but it's also where TBL is founded. We have a comment?
What we experienced with the TBL is, for example, if you have students that's everyone is strong.
Yes.
For example, they never ever get the opportunity to manage group work.
Yes.
To manage a student that's not contributing, or manage different or diverse personalities. So, for example, and that's why we also prefer having we group them. Right,
yes,
from different disciplines,
them, yes.
And but it's very difficult to group them for different personalities.
Yes.
So there's a lot of what we did find is a very nice tool. I don't have it here online. It's a free test, personality test that you can do, and you just click on the link, and it gives you a summary of what's your personality. So in the introductory discussion, although we group them, we ask them, explain your personality. Why do you do, so that they understand I need to manage different, and people are different in my group. So that might work.
That's very good
to
addition,
manage that.
Yes. So personality is an important thing. You can get the more information you can get for the team formation, the better you are for a start. Okay? Now, I can keep going, but obviously we don't have the time to go through the whole thing for a clarification session that normally would last half an hour to 45 minutes. But you get the idea. I just want to ask, is there any question in the questionnaire that we just did that actually you want to go through a clarification? The 4 C's is kind of obvious. Yeah? You've seen them. Other questions that you think are worthwhile clarifying at this stage? Do you have something? Yes? The true or false ones? So we have here a comment about question 6. It was a true or false.
We have different.
It's just about the online, whether it works online.
It can work online. Yes. Yeah. So we've got different opinions, but I think she's got a distance learning background. That's where you work in, and we don't. So for us, it seems possible because I think we don't know what we don't know.
Challenges, yes.
So yeah, I just what's the opinion of the rest of the class?
Yes.
Yes, much smaller.
So we think it's possible, and
it might not work. Okay. Can I get your quick feedback about why you think is not possible to do it in TBL?
Okay, so I'm teaching at the distance education, and with some modules, we have 500 to 700 students.
Yes.
All right, and then with live streaming, everyone is situated at their own learning space.
Yes.
So it's not possible to form groups.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're going to say we're going to do group work, the members are not going to get together because everyone is isolated where they learn. You know, so it's not feasible.
For that. Thank you. Anyone who is willing to defend this opinion or contrast the opinion of group work online? Yes?
Just a comment. There's software called Zoom where you can do breakaway rooms for group work online.
Yes.
But I do take your point. I do know it will be difficult for students to, with access problems and that, to make it work. So maybe if it's not a high-risk exercise, that you can use Zoom for group work.
For that. Thank you. And one more comment before we continue. So Zoom is a synchronous web conferencing tool that allows group formation by dividing teams of people into random allocations.
I think Santi just made a comment. She's checking our online people, and they by themselves just made a group chatting online. So because of the live stream, you created a situation where we should work in groups. Nobody told them to do it. They formed their group. They figured it out. So I think that the point is that there is tools available, there is things that are there, but we need to play with that, and we need to get in consultation.
Yes.
And that's also my my appeal to the lecturers, or my offering that. That's why you have the media people, and that's why you have the expertise at CTL that can help you. If you come and say that you want this, they can help you find a solution for it.
So I think maybe the question could be rephrased whether TBL online is more challenging than, or not straightforward, which is actually the more straight answer. So if I was to give you scores for that, following what you should have read over there, the answer will be that it's false. Actually, you can run TBL online, but you could directly appeal to me and say you made an absolute question and there is not an absolute answer. So you should have phrased it, the challenging aspect of it, and I will take that. Thank you. You get a bit, oh, there's one more point, final? Yeah.
Something that you can also incorporate in your teaching and learning is maybe the use of social media, like Facebook.
Media. Yeah.
Creating a closed group where they must inquire permission from you, that's the creator, but it can also serve as a collaboration tool for them. And then maybe they might have questions and they can sort it out amongst themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Now you get the point. That's now we are still in a clarification session. So we'll go through that, and normally in a typical university timeline, that will be all that you can do in one session. And that will be one of the lengthy sessions, over an hour, or definitely an hour. We allowed more time for your IRADs and TIRADs because we didn't have the timer and the actual thing. But the IRADs and TIRADs, they will be, depending on the questions, a 10-question IRAD we recommend 5 minutes. A 20-question IRAD we recommend 10 minutes, and nothing more. So don't go there and put the 50 questions. It's not the exam. So most of the people in our clinical science, they will have 15 questions and they will allow 10 minutes. Our people in big history, because of the numbers, and they wanted a bit more time for the clarifications, they had 10 questions and 5 minutes for both the IRAD and the TIRADs. Okay? It's exactly the same time that you give them. So if we continue now, normally we'll have a break or a close and we'll say thank you, these are the things, and you will come back to your application session, the focus application session in the afternoon or tomorrow. And the focus application session, if I was to run one with you now, it will be, for example, we need to develop an online strategy for TBL. So we have now 1 hour to work in team and articulate how the stages of the TBL will work in the online space. And I will give you the challenge and the problem to design, and I will ask you what will be the role of the teacher, what technology will you use in a kind of a format, and off you go with all the resources you have to design the application and then present it to each other. Or it could be a big kind of reflective activity. Select 2 of the classes that you already run and see how you can convert them to a TBL. Or it could be design your first TBL questionnaire. That would be the application thing. So it's very much TBL hands-on activity. And then next week, we'll come back and build on this. So a natural completion of that will be, for example, to take now each of the stages and go in more detail and see, okay, this week now will be about the preparation. What type of resources, how many hours, and so on. Here is your resources, read, here are the questions, and we'll go deeper and we'll unpack it. Or it could be, we've done TBL, now we do comparison with another theory, with PBL. You build it in another direction. But I won't come next week to introduce you to, I don't know, like something totally random, introduce you to policy and theory of South African education. It will make no sense, and it will be totally, totally logical to run a TBL on that, unless that's how you run your courses. So you do have very diverse, and in this is where you have TBL not every week, but you have perhaps TBL to kick off each new content area, but they are not linked together. Okay? Okay, how are we getting with time? Because I just want to talk to you a bit quick, sorry, with this question, just the research outcomes, like does it work from what I've seen?
I
I've just got a practical question.
Yes.
With large classes, there's usually the same classes presented a few times, the repeats.
Yes.
Does all the students always go to the same class? Because if you now in the same group,
yes.
Because the thing is, I can think about students that have different rosters because they've got different specialities. So on Monday they're with this group, on Tuesday they're with that, in that lecture, with that group. So how do you deal with that group work?
In our case, we know that, so as a lecturer, I know from the timetabling which students are enrolled for which allocation in the live. And I form the teams like that. And then the students, they have to come to that particular case. I don't know how it works with you, but when a lecturer commences the class, they get a list of the students and where they're supposed to be allocated in terms of the repeats. So they cannot really decide all of the 1,000 to come on Tuesday afternoon. There's no space. So they have to commit to that. TBL, in a way, enforces more control because we say you have to come to where your team has been allocated. But that assumes that a timetable, so our students, anytime they enroll for modules, they can enroll for modules up to 3 months prior to the commencement of the semester. So already now I know that the class is fully booked for next February, for March, because we complete. And I know which students they enrolled. If you don't have idea at all, what I would advise is that in the first lecture of the first part, you tell them about TBL, you form the teams, and you say, you guys, you follow the Monday lecture. And then the Tuesday morning, you form the teams over there. But if you have complexities that you cannot control, that TBL will be highly, highly problematic.
It's just something I just wanted the lecturers to keep in mind, because I know from when I studied, there is sometimes conflicts. If you, let's say the lecture is on Monday, Wednesday and Friday.
Yes.
You're not necessarily on Wednesday in the same group, because then there's in the morning and the afternoon a class. But due to your roster, you're with a different grouping on a Wednesday.
On a Wednesday, yes.
So I don't know how it works here. I didn't.
It might affect the context.
Okay.
Whatever preceded or happened in the previous session.
How it's going to go?
In the follow-up.
Yeah,
so
in the follow-up. The sequence. Yes.
Of a particular group.
Yes.
So that students have,
moving to doing it. Okay.
So just a practical question from somebody online. They said, what if a student comes to you during the course of the semester or maybe at the beginning and they say that they don't want to be in that group?
There's not such a thing.
Okay, thanks. Question answered.
In the same way that the student come to you and say, I don't want the lecture, I don't like you, it's the same attitude, yeah? It's like, that's how we run the class. You can be in the class and you can be part of the TBL, or you decide not to be at all part of the TBL. But the TBL is there to teach you primarily skills for teamwork. That's why it's been invented. It's not about you learning the content, because after that, just do all the preparation. So you made a decision which is reflected in your learning outcomes and in your assessments. Yeah? To be absolutely clear. If you're going to assess individually an exam only content, and the TBL is there as an ad hoc, you will expect all this kind of important things. All right? Okay, just in the next, let's only spend 10 minutes, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I don't want to take up to one. Just a quick, I will talk about the research we've done, because it might be an opportunity for you that you are doing TBL to plan a research around, if you want. And then we'll take any kind of final. Slideshow from current slide. So, what we were interested in the university, primarily because we are still exploring whether this will be one of our main pedagogies or approaches to learning and teaching, whatever you want to call them. So, we got the team of the Bachelor of Clinical Science, high-performing team, very focused curriculum, very structured, and the most vague course that you will see in the university that I mentioned that everybody can take. You cannot control who they are, their GPAs, which is their grade average. It's students from across the university of different ages, different genders, just name it. The most complicated and vague and the most structured. And we put them all in the TBL thing to see, is this a methodology that can work for both? The research design, so included in that case, it was volunteering, yeah? Meaning that I cannot force all 300 students to do it. 117 students from the team, which is roughly 40%, they agreed to be part of the TBL thing. That involved a questionnaire just before, when they commenced, on day one, before even we told them what TBL is. And that questionnaire was a series of questions around almost a personality test. One was prior experience of learning, either in school or in university, what they value as being positive or negative, just to see whether they are positively, they accept the idea of collaboration before we even commence, they are very positive about it, or whether there were students that would say, I'm just want my time to do it on my own, all the way to evaluating a bit the, like what is the value of lecture, what is the value of collaboration, and so on. Quick questionnaire. Then we had a TBL introduction to them, and it was very much in this kind of format. So to ensure that they understood what TBL is, we put them into the agony of reading the materials you just got given, so almost to understand the detail of it, and we ran a first TBL session with them as an introduction to the unit. Okay? That was very much, which ensures that at least they read and they understand the basics. And then there was a questionnaire after the TBL, immediately after they completed the last application focus session in weeks 12, 11, 12, around that. We collected the demographics of the students, and these were information about, obviously, their backgrounds, their discipline. In some areas it was more than health or different in health. We asked them about their time that they travel to come to the university, like some demographics about how they are positioning, which campus they are, if they were from online, and so on. Type of learning preference, hours of study. We asked them to define at this stage how many hours, because keep in mind that they study this in parallel with another 3 modules, that they are following a different pattern. So they know roughly how many times they allocate. A lot of them, they told us they allocate half an hour to an hour prior to TBL. After, and I'll tell you what's happened after. We asked them, ATAR for us is the scores that they get from the schools after they graduate in order to come to university. So a 75 ATAR, which is a 75%, is almost a basic entry level to a university. So the Bachelor of Arts, it will have a 75 ATAR. The clinical science will have a 92 ATAR. Medicine will have a 99 ATAR. Law will have a 97 ATAR. So you will see there. GPA is the grade point average, and not everybody has that. It's only if you're already studying in university, that will be what is your average across everything you are studying is the university. And then the final mark that they got in the particular module that had TBL. Because keep in mind, TBL had other assessments also, not just the TBL. And then we got the IRAT, sorry, not IRAT and TRAT performance from the thing. So we can correlate them against all of this. And then some open questions about learning experience. This was the questions I asked you about the environment, learning to like collaboration, these kind of things. Learning experience, this is some of the statements. We asked them, the teaching methods at Macquarie support my learning. The teaching methods support my professional development. I'm satisfied with my acquisition of skills. And then in the post, it was about similar, but for the TBL. We've done a bit of a testing of these questions with a group of students before we put it out, so we'll clarify that they understand what we're talking about. So, positive students on learning experience, higher after the introduction of TBL. We're talking about almost more than 80 out of the 117 students. They reported significantly difference of moving from the strongly disagree to the strongly agree, whether learning, the environment of learning in a TBL has helped them to improve. Positive students on learning experience, we didn't find the correlation between all these other measures. That's very important, because what we found out is whether you are the best student and whether you are the worst student as a startup, you reported positive attitude toward TBL. Very important, because the high distinction students, they didn't see it as a waste of time, and the students that they are almost failing also they didn't see it as a waste of time. So actually we found this as a very, very, very positive thing that actually talks to across the spectrum of our students. The total hour of studying significantly increased, which is to say 3 times. So before the TBL, they said that they spent on average half an hour to an hour to prepare for the particular event, which is actually the class. That was the question, to come to the lecture. So mostly they will go, they will get the notes, and they might be reading one of the readings. They reported up to 4 hours preparation for the TBL, again, irrelevant to whether they are high-performing students or low-performing students. And then when we interview them, the students that actually they got 93% across the medical degree, they said we felt so, we just spend more and more time, double checking that we know what we know because we need to go there and do it. And the students that they were almost failing, they also trying their best. However, none of them correlated with their final mark, which means that, which is also you can take a positive spin on it. It's like, it didn't matter whether you're going to end up getting a failing student will pass because of a TBL. So they value the TBL for something more than the academic performance, which it was about the collaboration in the team, which is actually quite good for us. But I cannot really go out to the university and say, oh, if we put all the potentially failing students in TBL, they will end up passing and getting distinctions. We didn't find that. But we found the failing students, they stayed within their grade average, but they enjoyed the class, they bothered to come to the class, and they start collaborating, so potentially they are building capacity to become better learners later on. This is what they told us. But it was not the fact that because they learned the clarification and everything, then they went to the exam or whatever it was, and boom, they become super experts. So it's not the answer to a failing student. It's an answer to bringing students in, motivate them to do something towards their learning. And that contrasts a bit some of the literature that actually suggests that here it is. But the literature comes primarily from medicine. And they are very good students that keep improving anyway. So my feeling is that there's a bit of bias there that, obviously at the beginning of a session, in a medical degree, you're aspiring to become better because you should become better and pass. And you should increase from normally distinctions to high distinctions. But in the literature, they don't address the failing students through a TBL. It's an opportunity, if you have such a diverse course with a lot of failings, to see whether TBL will do it and work with that. So we identify that TRAT could be used as a platform for the academic abilities because we've seen some sort of correlation there, but it was not as strong as the IRAT. So the IRAT, the individual test, it was the one that if you believe in this learning analytics theory, which is very much data that you can get out from your online systems in order to monitor how the students can improve, you could potentially use the IRAT test, the individual test, as an indication of students' performance to the final mark, which is not rocket science, It is almost like, but if you see a student failing the IRAT, but passing the TRATs, you could intervene a bit with the student, and you can use it as an analytics thing, which actually it's quite possible. The fact that the student performance of TRAT was significantly higher than the IRAT is good, because shows that actually students. The interesting thing is that we had also the other way around. We had good students moving from the correct answer to the wrong answer in the TRAT. Convincing. And then after the clarification, reverting. But the scores, they show that actually it is influential, and someone who believes that they know the right answer, they know it, but someone who strongly believes that the intra-inter is different, without bothering to Google, they convince each other. You know, it's actually quite an interesting thing, and we're trying to do more analysis on this kind of stuff. In the more kind of qualitative answers, the question was whether the TBL helps you with how you prefer to work. We found a good spread, so it was not boom, everybody wanted to work alone, now they want to work with classmates. But we had almost an equal 1/3 spread across all the modes. So still we had people wanted, but they shifted more towards at least the lecturer and the classmates, so more in the collaboration, which it is a positive contribution to class discussion and the thing. So overall, and the paper we are putting out in the Higher Education Research and Development Journal will come out in a few months, claims that the most important thing we are doing it because change the experience for the learner. That should be the bigger driver. So that's why I advocated to be introduced in places where you are worried about the experience that they get. You know, if you have a beautifully great mood and PBL, doing a TBL you might do a damage. But if you have a highly problematic yet very important session to run, doing the TBL would put them more to the right direction. That's the message I convey. It's not an answer to everything. Always don't underestimate the hours of studying. If they do perform well in the TBL, they do study more. So take this into account when you throw readings and resources to them. And the performance becomes more like that. That's in a nutshell where we are. We are doing a follow-up now with 2 more teams. This time we include human science, we include psychology, and there will be ongoing for the medical thing. That will be for the one. So, any final questions or any other points that you would like to clarify? Or anything from the online people? I know it's been a lengthy session, but
myself and Jessica was just sitting, and that word learning experience caught my eye. And I think we tend to think about our modules just as how many students has passed. But I think in the literature it's all over. It's more about the learning experience for the students. So just a comment to say that if I think that is a kind of bit of a mind switch to think about what experience your students will gain from this module, not only what mark.
Can I add to that? And just, some of you were with me yesterday. And yesterday it was a traditional delivery. And you got the experience, maybe you liked, but still you might felt I didn't have enough opportunity to interact or talk. Because it was 1 hour and a half me talking at you as much as I can and throwing theories and concepts that you never, maybe it was news to you, or anything. If myself I had to choose in which of the 2 events I would like to participate, it would be today's event, which had a bit of both. And this is exactly for the students. As long as you can achieve enough conceptual understanding and you meet the learning outcomes. So both of you, both sessions, they might actually result in you passing your exam later on, but which of the 2 you felt more engaged and more participated, this is exactly what TBL comes to for that. Anything else? Any final comments? We don't need to go until 1 o'clock. It's always good surprise to let the students go 10 minutes before 15. You know, they cannot need to rush in another.
Okay, so Prof. Panos will share all these resources. I think he did share it with you, but we will talk as we go along. There's more resources. So what I plan to do is within our academic professional development site for 2019, that is still being in development, there will be a lesson there with all the resources that Prof. Panos, I'll try my best to put it in place, and the extra things that he also give us access to. Yeah, and Prof. Panos and the Macquarie University, Amasa, is very much into collaborative approaches and even collaborative research.
Yes, we are.
So if you are open to something and using these kind of things and doing a study with him, please feel free.
Yes.
Okay,
and we are happy, as I said, to share all the resources, but if you want to even let's put the extreme thing that we might actually collaborate with a virtual TBL. We can actually have, that would be ideal at some point to have teams from 2 different countries debating and doing a live TBL using the technologies that we have here. You know, why not? I know we are trying to do the 3 campuses work together, but why don't we think a bit bigger?
Anybody who wants to take on a scholarship of teaching and learning project, this is now the time. Here's a topic for you. I'm going to ask Jessica to give us the final comment for today. And the final, I don't know, it's just because you look like you want to say something. And then if we can have a final comment from the people online. A final comment, and somebody online, please do a final comment if we can, and then we'll close off.
And there's an evaluation, I appreciate.
Oh goodness,
yeah.
And
It's
while
always good to get feedback, so we don't torture more people in the future.
Yeah. Please just check in your packs. There is feedback. Please just fill it out.
Prof. Paulus, thank you. I have always believed in team-based learning as a suitable methodology. Once again, I want to say that I think the experience that learners gain from this is so much richer than just coming or doing something before class, sometimes continuing with it in class and doing something outside of class, although that's also suitable in some cases. I think the other thing that I want to say is that this is also scaffolding. I think team-based learning will look different in your first year than what it would look like in an honours or program or so. And I think if we in a first year module can start scaffolding these different processes involved in the whole process, just teaching them how to do individual reading, how to do the individual preparation, and start breaking that down in a first year module and then putting it together in a sensible way. But I do believe that this is an awesome way to go, and not too much, not too often, but definitely a space in every module. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Okay, well, thank you for being such a lovely audience and participants, and the online people. We try the best to do it there as well. And
they say thank you. They say thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, enjoy your afternoon. I'm not sure, some of the faces we'll see tomorrow again. Okay, otherwise, if you want to live stream anytime, you can just contact us and we can send you the link if you're not registered.
Lovely.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks to the technical team as well.
Thank you, the facilitator. Madam,